Hello, class. Y'all ready to hear about one of my favorite summer reality shows long after summer has ended? As y'all know, I have such a love-hate relationship with the Bachelor franchise. But if there is one thing I always look forward to every year, except this year, it is without a doubt Bachelor in Paradise. Bachelor in Paradise is basically ABC's knockoff Love Island. Every year, castmates from The Bachelor and The Bachelorette hit the beaches of Mexico to try and find love a second time. This time, of course, facing the brutal elements as well. Although the luxury resort they're staying at every year absolutely has air conditioning, production turns off the AC as a way to artificially force everyone out of their rooms.
This is like ridiculous. This is so helpful.
And I'm also sweating a lot, so that's nice too.
I'm dying right now, dude. I would be so much more productive in this interview if I was not sweating my ass off.
It turns out there's actually nothing quite like just some good, old-fashioned heat exhaustion to just spur some drama between people. The show starts with a group of men and a group of women, with one group outnumbering the other. If there are, for example, more men to start, the women pick who they would like to couple up with from the men, and the men who aren't in a couple then go home. Then the next week, the men would have the roses, and new women would try and come down and take some of these men on dates, maybe convince them to leave their current partner for a new person. And this format will continue to alternate for the next 7 weeks. There are just so many things to love about this format. I mean, for one, you get to see some of your fan favorites from past seasons actually find love. You get to see people who had 0 screen time, people who went home even night 1 on their season, get this entire backstory you wish you would have gotten to see on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. It's also not just like 30 people all dating one singular person. It's like 15 people all dating each other. So it's way easier to believe that there actually is like connections forming, love, drama, jealousy. People who were villains on their season of The Bachelor get redeemed. Inevitably, we find out that that nice guy we all really liked from The Bachelor actually is kind of a dick once he gets a few Instagram followers. So do not panic if you are not familiar with all of these people from their original seasons. It's honestly a whole other ballgame once they're actually on the beach. What makes season 6 of Bachelor in Paradise so uniquely messy, you could say, is that this was really the peak of the Bachelor influencer boom. For context, this was right in between Hannah Brown's season of The Bachelorette and Peter's season of The Bachelor. And even though The Bachelor had always been popular, Bachelor contestants weren't signed to United Talent Agency before this time. It wasn't a full-on career to be a former Bachelor contestant, whereas now about 40% of all podcasts in existence are run by some Bachelor contestant from 6 years ago. And that dynamic definitely changes things for Paradise. For one, that means going on Paradise isn't just a fun way to find love, it's a huge boost to all of their platforms. And all of these people absolutely have that in the back of their mind during the show. But more importantly, too, even though it's presented as though these people are all meeting for the first time because they're all from different seasons of the show, pretty much all of them have met at least once at an influencer event. I mean, half of these people have the same social media managers. So inevitably, the people on season 6 of Bachelor in Paradise are coming in with history, preconceived opinions about one another. And the Bachelor producers then have to be 10 times more evil to make sure the interesting content is happening on their show, not off-screen months before. The devil works hard, but the Bachelor producers work harder. I also bring this up because even though Love Island is probably the closest comparison, I want to remind everyone that this is still a Bachelor show. The Bachelor franchise is infamous for putting in reaction shots that didn't happen, dubbing something in when someone has their back turned to the camera, chopping up different words people said over B-roll to make it seem like they said something feral that they absolutely never said. Not to mention, even though they always refer to this show as 7 weeks in Paradise, this whole show is actually filmed over a span of 3 weeks. A week in Paradise is actually only 2 to 3 days at most. Basically, the show is incredibly edited, and while I personally yell at my TV every time I hear what sounds like a very chopped up soundbite, it truly would be too tedious to point that out every time here. So what I would ask instead is that we take this show as presented, with the understanding that these people are heavily edited to fit certain narratives, they're rushed into making major life decisions within 3 weeks, and they are all just so sweaty. You cannot expect them to be on their best behavior. So do not leave mean comments on these people's social media. And if I'm being so honest, especially when it comes to Bachelor in Paradise, sometimes people just being toxic and messy, editing aside, it's just good TV. There are plenty of people I love watching on this season who do not behave great all the time. Does that make me a bad person for enjoying a little toxicity? Probably. But of course, before we get into all the shenanigans that are happening on this beach, we need to talk about today's sponsor, Factor. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. As y'all know, I am just incapable of making a short, simple video, and this Bachelor in Paradise video was no exception. I have been working on this for a really long time and have been really, really busy during that time. So the last thing I want to do at the end of a busy day is actually cook a meal that is good for me. That is like my last priority. For me, where Factor comes in handy is it takes the grocery shopping, the prep work, the guesswork out of making my meals. They just give you the meals all ready to go. You just heat it up for a couple minutes and you have a nutritious, delicious meal at the end of the day. And Factor offers over 35 different menu items every week for you to choose from Protein Plus, Calorie Smart, Keto to the Veggie and Vegan box, which is what I've been getting personally. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code Norton50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month's orders. That's code Norton50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month's orders. But enough yapping from me, let's talk about the messiest season of Bachelor in Paradise. Episode 1A. Immediately, this episode starts with Chris Harrison's dogs just full out on display. Because remember, this isn't your ordinary Bachelor franchise anymore. We're casual. It's all twine necklaces, upside down bikinis, and barely buttoned shirts from here on out. Now, I must immediately apologize because there is such a big cast of characters and most of them will have some sort of interesting plot lines at some points. So I'm going to be throwing a lot of names at you right now and honestly throughout this entire video. Some of them will be familiar to you if you watched my Hannah Brown video. Most of them will probably be new to you. And I'm going to skip around a few people that they introduced just because they'll be more important later. We'll get to them. But I promise I will give you all the context you need to know about these people. And if you're listening to this, just know I am throwing up pictures of everyone so we can try and keep some of these names straight. Okay, pencils ready? The first girl on the beach this season is Hannah G. Hannah G was the runner-up on Colton's season of The Bachelor, and her face card is absolutely insane. When she was on Colton's season, she was very sweet. She was very into Colton, even though it was pretty obvious she wasn't going to win, at least to us. But I don't think we got to see a lot of her personality on that season. Nowadays, though, I love her slime content on TikTok.
Yeah. I like this one. Oh, yeah. 10 out of 10 for me. In the least weird way I know what it would be like to chew it.
She was devastated when Colton broke up with her, but now she's healed, she is single, and she is ready to hit the beach and meet her man. And trust me, a lot of people thought she was going to be the Bachelorette instead of Hannah Brown. So the guys who are going to be on this beach are going to be very excited to see Hannah G. The first man on the beach this summer is Blake. Blake was also the runner-up on Becca's season of The Bachelorette, and I would say prior to Bachelor in Paradise, Blake had big, nice guy energy, which, as we know, means he can only disappoint us from here. You immediately get the vibe that he is like the guy everyone is going to be gunning for, and he knows it too. Although to me, personally, Blake always just seemed like a big dork. I'm sorry, I'm sure Blake is nice. That's probably just my East Coast snobbery showing because Blake for sure has like big Midwestern energy. I'm sure to anyone else he just seems like a cool, nice guy. But to me, I'm just like, what MLM is this guy trying to sell me right now? But regardless, Blake is here to find love on the beach. Has he talked to any of the girls who will be on this season prior to being here?
Have you been talking to anybody?
I have met along the way a lot of the women, not only from Colton season, if you will, but also past seasons.
Right.
You know, if Chris Harrison is asking you about it, that will absolutely be your downfall. Another woman from Colton's season who's here is Jane. Jane left night 1 on Colton's season, so she didn't even get to tell us how much she likes hot sauce.
Literally, I am the hot sauce of paradise.
It's like at this point, just do cocaine, right? Then there's Dylan from Hannah Brown's season, who you might remember as the guy who made this face when Hannah Brown sucked on a pickle. He is here for one woman and one woman only, Hannah G. Next up is discount Ryan Reynolds himself, Derek from JoJo's season of The Bachelorette. And fun fact, he actually got fully engaged on season 4 of Bachelor in Paradise, like this exact location. And he's back. And it is absolutely bonkers to me that he would actually be back this soon after and fully plans to get engaged on this reality show a second time.
The last time I was on this beach, I was with my fiance. It would be great if history would repeat itself with somebody new.
But honestly, all the women from Colton's season are just so excited to have an option that isn't Colton that this goes completely unnoticed by everyone. Then we have another throwback to Hannah's season, Kevin. You may remember Kevin as the chicken nugget guy.
I think what you did with me tonight was honestly ridiculous as well. And with the whole chicken nuggets thing, I think you can honestly just go yourself, dude. Whoa.
He dislocated his shoulder playing rugby and then spent the rest of his time on the show sadly watching Tyler C make out with Hannah.
Of course I wish that was me.
But he is back and stronger than ever.
I don't know. I think I'm a lot more prepared than last time.
Kevin is like that kid who rolled up the first day of school with the 64-pack of Crayola with like the sharpener in the back. He is begging people to notice just how much time he spent in the gym before this.
Is your shirt inside out right now? Is it? Yes. That didn't take long. He's already whipping off his shirt.
Kevin starts his time on the beach by negging Katie about her romper.
Not many women can pull off rompers, and you are pulling this off.
You think? What do you mean not many women can pull off
I don't know.
rompers?
Sometimes they just don't have a proper, physique.
He's so nice to me. What the don't deserve this.
Katie, please, I want better for you. But if Kevin sees ABC always be Cam, he is gonna start throwing shit.
If he says ABC one time here, I'm throwing at him.
Probably more chicken nuggets. Of course, Cam is back.
Do you have a strategy? Only strategy is always beach Cam.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. He is the Lin-Manuel Miranda of Bachelor Nation. And for the record, Cam was cringy at best on Hannah's season. He definitely seems like the kind of guy who introduces himself as ethically non-monogamous, but he didn't kill anyone. He didn't do anything that bad. So the constant reactions from Kevin over Cam being here is just a lot, let's say.
First off, can I have a hug, man? No! We're still arch nemesis.
Next up, we have one of my favorite people from Bachelor Nation, Demi. Demi first appeared on Colton's season of The Bachelor, aka Demi's season, and she was sort of a villain. At least the show tried to set her up that way. The other women on the show got mad at her for doing crazy things like picking up the group date rose.
Oh, it's my rose.
Oh.
You scared me for a second. I'm not gonna lie, I was like short of breath. I didn't know what was happening. It made me like slightly sick to my stomach.
And talking to Colton when they also wanted to talk to Colton. Some of the older women, and by older women, I mean they were 27. Yeah, it's bleak. The older women said Demi was too young and immature to be here because she was only 23, only for people on Twitter to go and find an entire racist, fatphobic, ableist manifesto from these women back from when they were 23. Although Demi and Colton clearly had no chemistry, she really won people over because she's not really like a lot of people you normally see on The Bachelor. Not only is she funny, she also opened up on the show about how her mom was in prison and how that impacted her. Also, although she was not diagnosed at the time of filming either of these shows, she is autistic and is very vocal now about her experiences with her autism, her path to diagnosis, her sobriety after going on these shows. It again probably shows just how starved this franchise is for representation, but I just have a soft spot for Demi. She can certainly be messy at times. She will be in this season. But I just feel like we could crochet and play Stardew Valley together and have a grand old time, Demi and I. But Demi is also going into this season with some complicated feelings. And to explain it, she needs to talk to everyone's favorite, Hannah Brown. Come on, you remember how good Hannah Brown's season was. Look, Hannah Brown's back. Demi explains that since leaving The Bachelor, she began seeing a woman casually, and she's ready to tell the world that she doesn't need a label, she just likes who she likes. And Hannah Brown says slay the house down boots diva coconut tree gay rights. Demi says that although she is not exclusive with this woman, she doesn't really have it all figured out yet, and she still wants to explore whether she could learn more about herself on Bachelor in Paradise. And I know what some of y'all might be thinking. Ashley, isn't this kind of like Jed from Hannah's season? Like, isn't it kind of unfair that Demi is going on to Bachelor in Paradise when she was already speaking to someone back in the real world? And you know, fair point. While I don't think it's the exact same situation, this issue will come back later, so just put a pin in that for now. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. Our boy, our hero, John Paul Jones has arrived on the beach.
I'm ready to surf, whatever waves hit Paradise. So, shaka bra, let's go. Chris Harrison, it's been real, man.
John Paul Jones is double cheeked up and ready for the good vibes of Paradise.
I knew it! John Paul Jones! Yes!
The second JPJ sprints onto that beach, everyone is instantly smiling. Their skin is clear. They are just so excited to see this man. And can you blame them? Everyone knows that Bachelor in Paradise really was made for someone like John Paul Jones. One of the first girls to talk to JPJ is Onyeka from Colton's season. A woman of taste, for sure. But bless her heart, JPJ just does not seem that into her.
You have to talk to me.
Yeah. I saw my reflection was...
I mean, can't blame her for trying. And finally, do y'all remember how I mentioned Blake may have talked to some women prior to getting on the beach? Well, honey, he's got a big storm coming in the form of Kaylin. Kaylin is also from Colton's season of The Bachelor, and Kaylin had a pretty controversial run on that season. Originally, her and Hannah Brown got into a big fight because Hannah B and Kaylin were roommates at the Miss USA pageant before they went on the show, and they seemingly had a big falling out during that time. Hannah B tried to tell Colton basically that she thought that Kaylin wasn't a good person, that Kaylin was manipulative. Meanwhile, Kaylin said that Hannah B was mean to her because Kaylin made it much further in Miss USA, and Hannah Brown was jealous of that, I guess. Initially, Bachelor Nation was pretty split on this drama, although I think more people actually took Kaylin's side when this first aired. I think in retrospect, people think Hannah Brown was right in that situation, but that's really just because everyone loved Hannah Brown as the Bachelorette afterwards. We really don't have any specifics on what went down between them, so who knows what happened there. But later in Colton's season, Katie, who is also here on Bachelor in Paradise, overheard Kaylin and the future winner of that season, Cassie, saying that they hoped Cassie would get engaged to Colton and that Kaylin would be the Bachelorette. It also came out at the reunion that Kaylin had DM'd Dean, a different guy from Bachelor Nation, before she even went on Colton's season. So although she was originally a contender for the Bachelorette spot, after the tell-all she was pretty unpopular within Bachelor Nation. Well, she is back now, and she has a bone to pick with Blake. Right out the gate, before she walks down on the beach, she tells Chris Harrison that Blake is not her favorite person right now.
You know, Blake's not my favorite person.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you were seeing Blake, and it didn't end well.
it did not.
And as she walks down, Blake immediately runs in the opposite direction, which is not a great sign of things to come. All right, gather around, everyone. This is where it gets juicy. Over the next day, Kaylin explains to Wells, the bartender, and some of the other women on the beach that some shit went down at Stagecoach, the country music festival. After Kaylin got dumped on Colton's season, Colton actually introduced Kaylin to Blake. Blake and Kaylin were talking for a few months, and one night at Stagecoach, they hooked up. But supposedly, the very next morning, as they are laying in bed together, Blake is actively DMing Hannah G and talking about how hot he thinks Tayshia is. And Stagecoach is only 3 months away from Bachelor in Paradise filming. So Blake is already aware that Kaylin, Hannah G, and Tayshia are all going to be on the beach with him in Paradise. So the whole situation just makes Kaylin feel very icky. Kaylin then says that just 2 weeks before they're supposed to go on Paradise, Blake called Kaylin and said, "Hey Kaylin, by the way, the night before we hooked up, I hooked up with my ex-girlfriend Christina, another woman from Bachelor Nation." And he, according to Kaylin, said that Kaylin was a mistake and that they need to promise not to mention this to anyone on the show so that he can pursue his relationship with Hannah G and basically not look like a giant player. Everyone who hears this story from Kaylin is immediately grossed out because, yeah, what she's describing is pretty slimy behavior, and she does seem genuinely really upset about it. Not to mention that since Kaylin has been on the beach, Blake has seemingly just completely ignored her, which also really upsets Kaylin. There is more to this story, which we will get to, but when I watched this for the first time, I really did feel for Kaylin. To be clear, all the people involved in this situation were single. It's not like Blake cheated on anyone, but this is all happening within a very tight circle of people who are for sure going to be on a reality show together in a few weeks. And what Kaylin is describing is not kind behavior at all. And the cherry on top for Kaylin is that Blake is seen as this golden boy that everyone on the beach wants to meet. Meanwhile, she's the one with this bad reputation in Bachelor Nation. Blake, however, does not feel too pressed about this. Hannah G and Blake immediately hit it off on the beach. They talk pretty much the entire first day from what we see. Then that night, Blake gets a date card and he can pick whoever he wants to take out for the night. And of course, he picks Tayshia. Don't get me wrong, Tayshia is an absolute catch, but everyone is immediately thrown off by Blake choosing Tayshia over Hannah G, including Hannah G and Tayshia, honestly. But luckily, Hannah G does not have to be lonely for too long because Dylan is locked in. Blake is off the premises, and it is Dylan's time to swoop in there. Dylan is just so into Hannah. He is just like kicking his little feet the entire time he's talking to her.
Your smile is amazing.
I don't know, I was just like super excited. I was like, hell yeah, we get to hang out more.
And it goes so well that they have a little makeout sesh in the palapa.
Blake blew it, man. Thanks, Blake.
Love decagons are immediately forming, and you just know that drama is going to happen, inevitably. Tayshia and Blake, however, on their date, have a great time. Tayshia is into him. But the next morning, a hot new bombshell enters the villa. Wrong show, but you get my point. Blake's ex-girlfriend, Christina, is here. The one who hooked up with Blake the night before Blake hooked up with Kaylin. She is here, and she has a date card. Christina walks up to Blake and is like, "Come here." And Blake is like, "Who, me?" "Sure."
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, you. Can I talk to you?
Christina says, "Hey, Blake, want to go on this date with me? I mean, we already know each other. I'm comfortable with you. Let's have fun." And Blake says, "Sure, Christina, what could go wrong with that?" But in her confessionals, Christina says that she knows what Blake did with Kaylin, and today, she is going to make Blake her bitch.
So today, I'm going to make Blake my bitch.
Already, this is absolutely diabolical. And that is just day 1 in paradise. Episode 1B. So Blake and Christina go on their date, and I'll be honest, I still don't know how I feel about all of this. Christina and Blake dated for a few months, which I should clarify. They both say they weren't official per se. They were never like exclusively boyfriend and girlfriend, but they have history. And they've been friends since that time. Then they hooked up at Stagecoach. The night after they hooked up, Blake hooked up with Kaylin, who he also was in a situationship with earlier. Then, 3 days before they were all supposed to leave for Paradise, Christina signed a contract to go on Paradise super last minute. When she signed her contract, she immediately told Blake, "Hey, just so you know, I'm going to be at the beach too." And that is when Blake told her, "Oh, hey, since you're going to be at the beach with all these people, you should probably know that I hooked up with Kaylin the night after I hooked up with you, just so you're not like blindsided when you get there." From Blake's perspective, he was single when all of these things happened. Blake thinks he probably should have told Christina about this sooner, but he also didn't know that Christina was going to be on the beach until very quickly before they left. And they're also, importantly, not in a relationship. You don't have to tell someone you're just hooking up with that you also hooked up with someone else. I mean, as long as everyone's like protected and consenting. But on the other hand, Christina has just found out about this information right before she's about to go on a TV show with everyone. Christina and Blake do still have history, so even if it wasn't cheating, I could totally understand being hurt by that situation regardless. And to add even more complexity to this, Christina was also on a previous season of Paradise, and during that previous season of Paradise, she was in a really bad love triangle where people just walked over her the whole time. And she probably does feel like Blake and production set her up to be in another messy love triangle with her, Blake, and Kaylin when she didn't want to be involved in any of that again. Blake and Christina start talking about this, and Christina says, "What you did with Kaylin was a slap in my face. It was so disrespectful." And Blake says, "Christina, like, do you have romantic feelings for me? Because I'm confused why you would feel disrespected if we're just friends and we both thought it was a casual hookup." But Christina insists that this has nothing to do with their history, nothing to do with feelings for him. She doesn't have any of those. She just doesn't think a friend would do that to another friend.
I made my bed and I'm gonna sleep in it. Like,
Did you change the sheets? Wow.
And this is also all getting hashed out on a date, by the way. Christina categorically said that she is not romantically interested in Blake, but she took Blake on a date to have this conversation, when in theory she could have talked about this with him like before they left or after this date, and she could have used this time to like pursue an actual romantic connection with somebody, because now when she goes back to the beach, everyone's going to assume that she's interested in Blake because she took Blake on a date. I'm telling you, it's a mess. But when Blake and Christina get back from their date, Kaylin absolutely unloads on Blake. She says, "Blake, you disrespected me. I had feelings for you and you told me I was a mistake and a disgusting secret, and then you ignored me on this beach." Blake's jaw like actually drops to the floor.
Well, we talked about this.
You talked about this, Blake. Like,
he immediately says, "I had no idea you felt this way. I'm so sorry. Like, can we talk about this, Kaylin?" But Kaylin does not want to talk. She immediately storms off from this conversation, still deeply distraught. And Blake is just absolutely flabbergasted. I think now I should mention that while this episode was airing, Blake went on his Instagram stories and posted a bunch of text messages between himself and Kaylin from when this all went down. And of course, there is a lot to unpack here. Okay, so I'm just going to summarize the first group of texts because they're from the night of Stagecoach, the night they hooked up. Basically, they're both super drunk. Kaylin says, "Hey, I want to come over and hook up and it'll just be casual. It won't mean anything." And Blake is like, "No, don't come over." But then, of course, she does come over. But I think the more important part are these next text messages where they're talking about if they're going to keep it a secret or if they're going to talk about it on Paradise and how they plan on going about that. So I will read those out loud. 1 week before Paradise. Call me. Dude, I'm freaking out. Shoot, lol, call you in 2. In the car with my parents. Yeah, I'm scared. I'm thinking of pulling out of Paradise. Dude, I'm shaking. Who knows? And how? We've been so careful. What happened? Sorry, I'm gonna let my phone charge for a bit and call you back. Did you talk to Cassie? Don't stress, we'll figure it out. Easier said than done, lol. I know, I don't know what to do. We have a week to decide. I want to think about it for a little bit. No, I need to tell before then so that she isn't crazy mad when she is down there. She being Hannah G, by the way. I don't want to make this decision today, though. Can we wait until, like, Wednesday? Okay, Wednesday morning. Have you talked to Cassie about it? Yeah, her and Colton didn't say anything. I don't get it. Like, they didn't text back? I really don't want to tell people, but I also don't want people finding out and looking like a liar. No, I talked to them. They just told me they don't know how anyone found out. Can we just take the day to think? It's not something we can undo, so I don't want to make the decision hastily. Well, what are you leaning towards? I think it may be better to be honest, but I honestly don't know. Well, I just don't think you will feel any more comfortable. And sure, if we have another day to think, I guess, let's just be honest. We fucked up so bad. If we play it off as not being a big deal, then it's not. Everyone hooks up in this world. It's gonna be. Yeah, but not everyone is you and me. I'll call you in a bit and we can talk more. Okay. How are you doing? Just wanted to check in. I'm good. Better. Everything is good. I feel better too. I think we are overthinking everything. I still want to talk about it all, but we will be all right. Same. Hi, did you tell Hannah? Hi, not yet. Why? I'm just stressed and can't stop thinking about it. I'm hoping she won't think it's a big deal. I, for one, don't love people posting private text messages. Blake did eventually take the text down because he said Kaylin was getting attacked and slut-shamed, and he says that he didn't think it would happen like to that extent. But I also understand that if he just said, hey, Kaylin reached out and offered to have like a casual hookup, I agreed, we talked about it after and everything seemed fine to me, people wouldn't just believe him on that. Back on the show, Blake is seen crying and he says, it looks like I hooked up with Kaylin and bolted and forced her to keep this secret when that's just not true. And with the information we have now with the text messages, it does for one suggest that Kaylin was the one who initiated their hookup and that they both wanted it to be casual, not a romantic relationship, which does seem different from how Kaylin was discussing all of this earlier. But again, taking into account that Kaylin and Blake were supposedly talking at some point before this, even if Kaylin said that she wanted it to be a casual thing, I could see a possibility where she still did have romantic feelings and ended up getting hurt afterwards. Like, it's messy, but people are messy, I get that. But the text messages also show that Kaylin and Blake did seem to talk about how they wanted to address the hookup on Paradise multiple times. I mean, obviously Blake posted these screenshots himself, so he's going to pick the ones that make him look the best, but it does not seem like Blake unilaterally initiated this hookup or forced them to keep it a secret. It seems like they both mutually agreed that if it came up, they would be honest about it, but not make it a big deal. But then Kaylin, before she even steps on the beach, is like, Chris Harrison, I'm mad at Blake. This is going to be a big thing, which feels incredibly strange given that we now know that Blake and Kaylin had been talking about this for weeks. They could have had this conversation off screen if they wanted to, but it seems like Kaylin did want to have this be a big topic on Paradise. I don't know, this whole thing feels like one giant miscommunication, and I can see why Blake is confused. Like, if Kaylin was this upset, they were communicating. They could have talked about this before they got on the show, and maybe they did and we don't have the screenshots for that. We don't know. But even in that scenario, she didn't have to tell every girl on the beach that Blake sucked before actually having a conversation with him. At the end of the day, I do think it was naive at best for Blake to assume that this wouldn't be a big thing on Paradise, because I'm also sure that behind the scenes production is gassing Kaylin and Christina up to get just the biggest blowout possible between these three. And if I were a girl on the beach looking to get engaged, I wouldn't want to deal with this love triangle with Blake either. JPJ is here. Why waste my time with that? In short, I think everyone in this situation was a little bit messy, but I do not think that Blake is this big bad villain that he absolutely gets painted as in the first few episodes of the show. And I at least give Blake credit for trying to talk this through with both of them and apologize immediately to Christina and Kaylin multiple times, because both of them seemingly just drop these huge emotional bombs and run away as soon as the conversation gets started. But now Blake has an entire beach of women who don't like him very much because of this. And at the end of the day, it did really seem like he wanted to actually pursue something serious on the beach, regardless of whatever he was up to before this. We haven't even had the first rose ceremony yet, guys, and I'm exhausted. While Christina and Blake were on their date, while all that was happening, Clay also got a date card. Clay is from Becca's season of The Bachelor, and he's got big teddy bear energy. Some important context for Clay is that before he went on Paradise, he dated Angela, who was another woman from Bachelor Nation. They dated for 8 months, they were looking at houses, they were supposedly pretty serious. But they broke up 3 months before Paradise, and Clay is single and ready to put himself back out there. Well, here's the thing. Annalise, who is also on the beach, is one of Angela's best friends, and she is telling everyone on this beach that she does not think that Clay is here for the right reasons. She said that Angela and Clay were talking about their future kids. They were planning their future, and he dumped her right out of the blue. Basically, Annalise thinks it's way too soon for Clay to be here. Clay chats up some of the women to see who he wants to take on a date, and it's between a woman named Bibiana and Nicole. Bibiana was on the last season of Bachelor in Paradise, and she is just waiting for someone to give her the hoo-ha whispers.
Goal is to have the hoo-ha whisper.
I mean, aren't we all? Nicole is from Colton's season of The Bachelor, and she is best known for crying a lot. The hydration necessary for the amount of tears shed on Colton's season was astounding. And all for Colton, too. But Nicole has been interested in Clay for a long time, supposedly, and she's just excited to see that he's here and single.
What could you ask for right now that you don't have? Like, think about it.
Boyfriend.
Clay ends up picking Nicole for the date, and right as they're about to leave for their date, Annalise walks right up to Clay for a dramatic confrontation. She says, "Clay, you shouldn't be here. You broke Angela's heart, Clay. I know you were texting her after the breakup, Clay. It's crushing Angela that you're here on this beach." Spoiler alert, Angela will also be on Paradise dating other people later, so I appreciate Annalise sticking up for her friend, but it's also clear that she's projecting a lot of emotions about men in Annalise's life that have done her dirty onto Clay. And she gets very emotional in this conversation, and Nicole has to walk up like, "Hey, Clay, you want to go on the stage?" Just kind of squeeze past you there, Annalise, with your tears.
And I'm also saying this as a friend. Like, I think that you sort of need that.
Hey.
So after Clay and Nicole leave, Annalise is still crying at the bar, and she again says that she feels like she stood up to every guy who's ever done her wrong. And Demi's like, "I'm sorry you're sad, Annalise, but like, did you have to have this dramatic confrontation right before Clay went on his date? I'm sure your friend was hurt, but Clay is single. Like, you could have made a connection with somebody else right now." Clay and Nicole do have a really good date.
There's a donkey in the mix. I don't even know what's going on, but I feel like we're really in Mexico.
And Clay explains that although he thinks Angela is a great person, he's been single for a while now and he's ready to move on with Nicole. Finally, it is the night of the first rose ceremony. This week, the men have the roses, so 3 women are going home tonight. Ladies, better get in line with Cam. It might be your last chance.
If you haven't talked to me yet, tonight may be your last night.
Oh my God.
Kaylin, bless her heart, does some quick math and realizes that Cam is probably her best shot at getting a rose, and she's gonna do whatever it takes. She heard Mike Johnson is coming next week.
Based on all the girls that I've met so far, I don't have any infatuation with any of them like I do with you, so...
Sometimes sacrifices have to be made, okay? Both Onyeka and Jane are really fighting for John Paul Jones's rose tonight. Onyeka braids JPJ's hair and it looks fabulous.
Oh my God, this looks so cool already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jane gives John Paul Jones some tacos with hot sauce, and JPJ just starts puking in the ocean.
It's kind of spicy though. God, I feel so bad.
You're good.
This man was just annihilated by tacos. It's bad. Bless Jane's heart. She is just in tears after this. I mean, I would be too if I accidentally poisoned JPJ.
That was not what I intended to do. I need a minute.
It's gonna take more than a few tacos to keep this man down, I tell ya.
Well, I suppose there's a special place in hell for men who waste good tacos, and allegedly I'll be rapping on the door momentarily.
And finally, Blake. Blake pulls Tayshia aside and is like, "Hey, boo. What's up?" And Tayshia is like, "Blake, you gotta figure out your stuff, get it together." And Blake's like, Yeah, I do.
I'm not gonna lie, Christina painted you in a very bad light.
Did she really?
I think you need to clear that situation up.
Blake says, "You know what? I've had enough fucking around. It is time to go after who I've really wanted this whole time, Hannah G." Blake has lit like 3 candles for her. It's serious. Blake pulls Hannah G aside and says, "Hey, babe, I know it's been kind of a hot mess, but is there still a chance between us?" And they kiss. They are both smitten. Pretty soon after this happens, Hannah G is like, "Oh shit, this night turned out messier than I thought it would. This Dylan guy I just met is attached at my hip. He's really into me. But Blake went to Stagecoach. How do I decide between these 2 men?" Demi is in one ear telling Hannah, "Dump Blake. Pick Dylan. Just dump Blake. Pick him." But as much as Demi tries to manifest, there is just something about Blake that Hannah G just can't let go of. So Hannah tells Dylan, "Hey, just so you know, Blake and I kissed and I'm confused. I feel like a bad person. I don't know how I feel." Dylan is devastated. Hannah G isn't all in on me night 1. What could be worse than this? The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, sure, but literally nothing else. And no, we still have not gotten to the first rose ceremony. Episode 2A. All right, Let's finally discuss the first pairings of Paradise at our rose ceremony. We're just going to speed through some of these. Derek gives his rose to Demi, Clay gives his rose to Nicole, Wills gives his rose to Katie, Kevin gives his rose to Sydney, and no, we have not seen these two interact even once. John Paul Jones gives his rose to Onyeka, Cam gives his rose to Kaylin, Dylan gets to go first, so he gives his rose to Hannah G before Blake can, and so Blake asks if Tayshia will accept his rose, and Tayshia hits him with a, sure.
Tayshia, will you accept this rose?
For sure.
Finally, the last person giving a rose tonight is Chris Bukowski. Chris is a Bachelor Nation veteran. This is his 6th Bachelor reality show, and Annalise has really been shooting her shot with Chris. She checked his heart rate, prescribed kisses, did a quick scoliosis check, checked his head for lice. I mean, she pulled out all the stops for this man. So who will he give his rose to? Christina. Because let's be so serious, the producers were not going to let this Blake, Christina, Kaylin drama die that fast. So finally, the first 3 women sent home on Paradise this season are Hot Sauce Jane, Bibiana, and Annalise. So it is finally week 2 in Paradise, or as nerds like me call it, day 3. The women have the roses this week, and that means it's time for some hot new men to enter the beach. First, we have Jordan Kimball. Jordan Kimball was a villain on Becca's season of The Bachelorette because he wore gold booty shorts to the Sacred Rose ceremony, and he also got engaged on the last season of Bachelor in Paradise after angrily throwing a teddy bear into the ocean. I think the best way to describe Jordan's vibe is he's kind of like a straight Billy Eichner, and I do mean that in the worst way possible.
Look, it's weird to say I'm a vet at this now, but like your boy's salt and peppered seasoned.
There is absolutely no way this man is here to find a romantic relationship. He is here to make sound bites for the producers and, maybe drown some more teddy bears while he's here. Jordan pulls Hannah G for a chat, and Dylan has absolutely no reason to be threatened by this, but literally anytime a guy tries to talk to Hannah, he is immediately making... That's his face. That's the face he makes.
Oh, I'll show her around. Do you feel intimidated?
Shut the up.
Dylan is sweating as if he didn't already know that everyone was going to try and talk to Hannah G. Jordan asks Hannah if she's talking to anyone, and she says, well, yeah, Dylan and I are really into each other, but also Blake said something about wanting to pursue me, so yeah, I'm kind of taken. Jordan immediately forgets about finding a date for himself to get to the bottom of this situation. He pulls Nicole and Christina to tell him all the hot goss he missed with the Blake stagecoach drama, and he is not happy about it.
Blake one-nighted both of these gals. Like they were a couple of milk cartons at lunch.
Does that metaphor make sense? No. But also you should know that while they're all spilling the tea about Blake, the editors keep cutting away to Blake Fortnite dancing in the hot tub.
And Blake one-nighted both of them. Blake's the problem. Blake's out here and he's just walking all over, trying to mark his territory everywhere.
As if Blake hasn't been through enough. So out of all the available women Jordan could pick from, he picks the most toxic option and asks Hannah G to go on this date with him. Initially, Hannah is like, yeah, I guess. But after a few minutes, she remembers the gold booty shorts and is like, hey, Jordan, so I actually don't want to go on this date with you. I just can't date 3 people at once. I've got to figure out what's going on with Dylan and Blake. Jordan is like, I can't believe this. This woman who told me she was already invested in 2 other people doesn't want to date me? I guess I have no choice but to ask the other strongest couple so far to break up. Nicole, you want to go on this date with me?
What? Me? Like, out of all people, she chooses me.
One thing you'll learn about Nicole is that she's also just a little bit toxic. She's like, hell yeah, I'll go on this date with Jordan and make Clay jealous.
I have been, dating Clay and I've been having an amazing time, but, I hope this, makes Clay, realize that I am a hot commodity.
In fairness, the show just started. It's not weird for her to want to be exploring her options, but Nicole is truly just on this date for the zipline. No, really, they actually go ziplining. They also again talk shit about the Blake stagecoach thing on their date.
He took Tayshia.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and at the same time, he's telling people that he's actually here to pursue Hannah G.
Meanwhile, back at the beach, Tayshia, Kaylin, and Demi are also talking shit about Blake, and with just cosmic timing in that moment, Blake hits his foot on a rock and he loses his toenail.
He is selfish, and we just hit a rock.
Blake can't put his feet in the ocean. He's walking around with a limp for the rest of his time on the show. The Bachelor in Paradise gods have truly smited this man. But enough of that, everyone shut up. Finally, our Lord and Savior, Mike Johnson, has arrived on the beach. Everyone get up, salute the flag. Chris Harrison says, Mike Johnson, I don't know if we've ever had more of a fan favorite Bachelor contestant.
I don't know if there's anybody more beloved in Bachelor Nation than you right now.
I'm just being me, man.
Not enough to make you the Bachelor, but hey, you have a date card. Go get him, Tiger. The women are immediately swooning, and the men are sweating, as they should. Onyeka is exactly on my level because she first went for John Paul Jones, and now she really wants to go on a date with Mike. A woman with taste. But unfortunately for Onyeka, Mike picks Kaylin to go on this date, which leads to Cam absolutely spiraling. Because remember, on Hannah Brown's season, Mike was the one who told Hannah B he thought Cam was manipulative, and Hannah B sent Cam home that night. Although let's be honest, Hannah B was probably going to send Cam home that night regardless. I don't think Cam is a bad guy, but he is not the best with social cues, and you know, not everyone can match his freestyle rapping freak. But at least Cam got to read Kaylin his love poem he wrote for her before she left.
It's kind of long, but just bear with me. Guess what?
You already know Kaylin and Mike have a great date because he's Mike Johnson, hello. Kaylin's just like, I love how you respect women. And Mike's like, yeah, respecting women is pretty cool. Cam doesn't even know this is happening and he's already walking into the ocean. He's full on got like the sad Charlie Brown walk down pat. Also that night, our guy Wills has decided he really wants to pursue Katie, who he gave his rose to last night. He does this big romantic setup and says, listen, Katie, I think you're an amazing woman. You deserve the world, and the whole thing moves Katie to tears. Not the good kind. It's honestly kind of hard to make out what Katie's saying because her voice just kind of goes,
it's like you blowing me out of the water. I tribute to be 1000% with you. I thought I was going to shut this door and I want to right now.
I mean, poor Wills, poor Katie, honestly. This is actually the second time this season that a woman has tearfully told Wills that he's a great guy who did nothing wrong, but they just don't like him. He was actually rejected by Hannah G earlier on day one. And while Katie is doing a lot, her heart's in the right place. What we didn't get to see is that Katie has actually been talking to Chris. Chris sees Katie crying and is like, hey, Katie, don't be sad. I like talking to you. And that works.
I'm here. You know?
No wonder Katie was crying so much. I'd be crying too if I liked Chris more than Wills. Also, didn't Chris give his rose to Christina last night? Forget all about that. Chris and Katie are a couple now. We don't know why. They showed us absolutely nothing, but take my word for it, I guess. But let's get back to the Hannah G, Dylan Blake love triangle. I know none of us want to, but we have to. Hannah and Dylan have been talking all day, and as we know, Dylan is locked in. But that night, Blake finally pulls Hannah to talk again. Also, when Blake walks up to grab Hannah, he interrupts Demi telling what sounds like an incredible story.
I went to a cowboy dance hall and I puked in my boot. Walked in with one shoe on.
Like, let's talk about that more. Forget Blake. Blake pulls Hannah to talk away from everybody, but also directly in everyone's line of sight at the bar. And he says, come on, Hannah, let's dance. Christina and Tayshia are at the bar watching this whole thing, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that move. He did it with me. We all know what's coming next. And just like that, Hannah and Blake are just smooching where everyone can see, including Dylan. Everyone at the bar is immediately like, get down, Mr. President. Look away, Dylan. Please, Dylan. Avoid your sweet eyes. You don't deserve this.
Dylan, stop looking.
Why is that? Is that weird?
Dylan, however, sees this hot action and thinks, maybe I should confront them about this. And everyone, for some godforsaken reason, is like, yeah, Dylan, go get her. This is a great idea that definitely will not go wrong immediately.
Hey, man. Can we talk for a minute? I feel like you've had her, like, all day, man. Yeah. Like, you've shadowed her all day, man. Yeah. Well, I know. I just feel like I gave you all day, man, and I was, like, respectful, and I didn't want to interrupt anything. My whole mindset is I just kind of want to focus on Hannah. So am I. But you weren't. Like you've
Yeah,
been
I know. I've
focused on
expressed
every other girl.
Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Like, I've expressed that to her. I've cleared all that up, and I've expressed that to her, and I'm pursuing her, man.
Yeah, I just want to talk.
You've been talking to her all day, man. She has a hard week this week. She has a lot of decisions to make, and you can't swarm her like this, okay? She needs to make decisions on her own.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do that whatsoever.
Like, man, this is why I didn't do this earlier when you were talking to her, because I knew this would make her incredibly uncomfortable. Like, what you're doing right now is making her incredibly uncomfortable.
I'm just like, as to what's, and that's all.
What are you confused about?
I just want to talk for like 5 minutes. I just want everyone to be on the same page, that's all.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Well, I don't know, guys.
No.
Like, you want to just watch us dance some more, or?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk for like 5 minutes. I'll talk to you later.
I honestly don't know what Dylan's thought process was, how he thought that was going to go for him. It's rough to watch. Like, yeah, is it kind of rude that they're talking and making out right where Dylan can see? Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that either. But also, I cannot stress this enough. It is day 3 of Hannah even knowing Dylan, and she has been very upfront about being undecided and wanting to also explore her relationship with Blake. And this is Bachelor in Paradise. That's literally what these people are here to do. Even though I think Blake is messy, Dylan just comes off really insecure and clingy by the end of this, which does him no favors. Episode 2B. Anyways, it is another beautiful day in paradise. Kevin is bench pressing a pot, JPJ fell asleep in the hot tub again, and Derek and Demi are just galloping into the sunset.
That's what we all want for everyone, is just like for everyone to be happy, and you can tell that like Derek makes Demi happy.
But Dylan needs to know what exactly he's missing between Hannah and Blake. The idea that Hannah would still be talking to someone else on day 3 of Paradise makes absolutely no sense to him. Well, Hannah says there may be more to this story still. Hannah tells Dylan that a week before Paradise, Blake messaged Hannah and said, "Hey, to show you how serious I am about pursuing you in Paradise, I bought a ticket to Birmingham and I'm on my way right now." They met up, Blake told her all about the Kaylin and Christina stuff, they talked it out, they kissed, but nothing else happened. They just had this one conversation. So this does actually explain why Hannah wasn't more scandalized by the stagecoach drama like all of the other women on the beach, because she had already heard it from Blake before. Dylan and the rest of this beach seem to interpret this as Hannah admitting that her and Blake had a full-on relationship before Paradise, and to be clear, I don't think that that's what happened at all. The reality of this situation is all of these people have the exact same managers, including Blake and Hannah G. So they had met at like influencer things before, but the show just isn't saying that. And they were also both aware that they were going to end up on Paradise at some point, and they probably had it in their heads that they would see if their relationship could turn into something once they got to Paradise. But this also probably wasn't some elaborate scheme concocted by either of them. I mean, if it was, that plan certainly didn't go well for Blake. Tayshia, however, finds this all incredibly shady. Tayshia is starting to think that Hannah G is the real puppet master behind everything. Hannah talking to Blake and Dylan on day 3 of Paradise? How dare she? Right, Nicole? Even though Nicole is also talking to people despite Clay being all in on her.
And Nicole's for sure not the type of girl to play around with Clay the way that Hannah is toying with Dylan's emotions.
I mean, Nicole is going to go on her 3rd date later this episode. I understand Tayshia's frustration that she went on a date with Blake, who seemingly wasn't that set on Tayshia. He was probably more interested in Hannah G, and he also wasn't this committed, monogamous guy that Tayshia probably thought that he was. But that's not Hannah G's fault. I like Tayshia a lot, but it just feels like there's a lot of projection happening here. Tayshia walks down and confronts Hannah for, not warning her before she went on the date with Blake, which, I mean, yeah, would have been nice, I guess. Editing me here, I'm also just thinking, what if Hannah G did walk up to Tayshia and was like, "Hey, Blake kissed me, just so you know Blake kissed me." Like, that would also be really weird of Hannah to do. And I don't think that Tayshia would have had a good reaction if Hannah did that either. I kind of feel like Hannah was just put in a sticky situation by Blake. But also, everyone, Tayshia included, knew Blake was interested in Hannah G. That's why Tayshia was surprised when Blake picked her on the date in the first place. I don't know, it feels like all the other women are just mad that Hannah G doesn't hate Blake the way that they all do, because all we see of them is them shit-talking Blake when they could be rizzing up JPJ or Mike Johnson. Come on, ladies, let's not lose sight of what's important here. But enough with the straight people, let's see what the gays are up to. Demi has spent 3 days getting to know Derek, and already a lot of feelings are coming to the surface for her. Demi tells Katie that she initially wasn't sure if she was just into this woman she was dating back home because she was the only person Demi was talking to at that point. Demi didn't know if her feelings for this woman were real, basically. But now that Demi's here on the beach, she's getting to know this great guy, Derek, she is still thinking about this woman she was seeing back home. And this part of the episode does make me cry because Demi also talks about how new being open about her identity is for her. She just came out to her parents. She's still very unsure of herself. And she also knows that she has to be honest with Derek and tell him about this. It is also just like so genuinely refreshing to see the Bachelor franchise having these nuanced conversations about queer identity when the overwhelming amount of times on the show, queer people are just like accessories for group dates and aren't given love stories of their own. Demi does end up telling Derek that she's been dating a woman casually back home and she doesn't want to lead Derek on in this situation. She does, however, feel torn between them. Derek is understandably sad about this, not because Demi likes women, to be clear. He loves RuPaul's Drag Race.
She still has these lingering feelings for somebody else, and I don't care if that's a man or a woman, like who really does and who should.
It's just never fun to hear someone you like is interested in two people. But at the end of the day, he's also only known Demi for like 3 days, and they're on a casual dating show. Derek does seem to sense that it would be also unfair to pressure Demi to pick between the two right away, and he doesn't do any of that. Honestly, he takes this whole conversation on the chin way better than I would have. The next new man to walk down the steps is Dean. Dean was famously a fuckboy on the last season of Paradise and got himself in a love triangle with Christina. Yes, Blake's Christina. But Dean's a changed man now. He has a mustache. He has a van. Dean's the kind of guy who will ask you if you knew Tame Impala was just one guy. Bet you didn't know that. And I do love how everyone on this beach is acting like Dean is homeless because he took 6 months to explore all the national parks in a van.
Out of Los Angeles, I live in a van now.
So you have no home.
Right, homeless.
You live in a van.
Right, I don't really have a job.
You are a cat.
Like, most people can't afford to fuck around coast to coast all while growing a thick stash for a month at a time. I think Dean's the one who's got it made here. Astute listeners will also remember that Kaylin slid into Dean's DMs a few years ago before she went on The Bachelor. So she is absolutely thrilled to see Dean here. But then Kaylin overhears Christina talking right next to her, talking about the Blake, Kaylin, Christina stagecoach thing again. And she starts freaking out that Christina is going to also tell Dean and ruin her experience over this. So when Dean walks up to talk to Kaylin, she is just fully in tears, having an anxious breakdown. But she manages to save it and get the date with Dean. How is Cam taking that? Well, he's just upset because all he can do at the end of the day is be himself.
I've just been myself, and it's not working. And that's the only thing I know how to be, is myself.
ABC, always be Cam. Mike Johnson, though, he takes it on the chin. I mean, it's not like Dean is competition for Mike Johnson. And he decides that he's going to pursue Sydney. The next man to walk down the beach is a guy named Christian, who seems like he just escaped straight out of a telenovela. Jordan immediately clocks that this man Christian showed up to Bachelor in Paradise in running shoes.
He wore athletic shoes to Paradise, like on entrance. Go buy a pair of espadrilles, you.
You see, Jordan and Christian were on the same season of The Bachelorette. And even though Christian went home night 1, Christian and Jordan had a huge fight at the Men Tell All over, I think, whether men should wear socks with loafers.
High waters, really?
I mean,
You're wearing high waters.
Exactly, we got 2 other guys wearing
Yeah, thank you.
loafers, no socks.
A question that divides us all, really. Also, wear socks with loafers for the love of God. Christian immediately sets his sight on Nicole and takes her on her third one-on-one date in 3 days. And Nicole is loving this.
I feel like you could get me in trouble.
What kind of trouble?
Good trouble, good trouble.
That's what I want to hear. Trouble.
Christian is laying it on thick.
The moment she said yes to me on a date, I was like, it's game over. Sorry, boys. Best of luck.
Meanwhile, she knows Clay is just sulking over his girl getting taken from him twice in a row. Nicole comes back from her date with Christian and she is just giddy.
Like the Bachelorette.
This is a crazy situation to be in. I never thought I'd be in it, but here we are.
She is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have 2 men fighting over me. That's so crazy. This has like never happened to me before.
Like guys could be potentially fighting over me. That's never happened to me in my life. This is new to me. I'm not used to being like, hey Clay, okay, hey babe, hey Christian,
Okay, but besides
hey Jordan.
Nicole tells Sydney that she really likes Clay, but Clay is just not toxic enough. She needs Clay to be aggressive, fight for her, put these other men in their place. Meanwhile, Clay has like the energy of a pit bull who was adopted by a childless white woman in her 20s. Like he was in the NFL. He could absolutely fuck someone up, but he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to wear footy pajamas and cuddle. So after Christian and Nicole get back from their date, Clay pulls Nicole to, just catch up on how their day went. And Nicole again says that she wants Clay to be more aggressive. As Clay is fully in leisure mode, stretched out on the daybed with Nicole, Christian comes up to try and pull Nicole again, as if they didn't just spend the whole day together on their one-on-one date. Clay doesn't even bother getting up for this conversation because he knows he could flick Christian over if he wanted to. But Nicole lets these two bicker over who should get to talk to her for I think just a little bit too long.
I feel like I had a date with her today. You had a date. You had a date. Exactly. And your date's over. And I want to back at the mansion.
Christian is like, come on, Nicole. Who do you want to talk to? Me or Clay? Who do you want to talk to? And Nicole is like, oh, Christian, well, I'm going to talk to Clay now, but I'll talk to you later, okay? Don't worry about it. So Christian walks away, and Nicole is like, see, Clay, you didn't yell at him. You didn't tower over him. Come on, be a man.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to raise your voice. It's like, put a guy in his place. Like, he was towering over you. Like, you're so much bigger. He's like a shrimp compared to you.
And Clay is again like, no, I'm an adult. I'm secure in my masculinity. We don't need to be doing all that. But the next night is the next rose ceremony. There are now 13 men and 9 women. So it is going to be an absolute bloodbath. And Nicole, the Bachelorette of Paradise, is still very excited to potentially have men fighting over her tonight. Christian decides that he's going to pull out all the stops. He's got some champagne, some chocolate strawberries, and most importantly, a piñata, because that's what women really want. Jordan is looking over at Christian just sitting spread-eagled on the daybed with this big piñata and is like, come on, Clay. Don't you want to just go over there and beat Christian up a little bit? Whack the piñata on his head? Come on, don't you want to? And Clay's like, no, I won't do that. But you know what crazy thing I was thinking of doing? Since Christian tried to interrupt our time last night, I'm gonna go interrupt his time before he even gets to open the piñata. That way, Christian won't even have the blood sugar boost from the Laffy Taffies he stuffed in there when I make my move. Clay's getting real fucking crazy. So Clay walks over and says, hey Christian, great setup here. Really love what you've done with the place. Love the piñata. I mean, fantastic work. But I'm gonna take Nicole, if you don't mind. And Christian says, no. Then after a very long pause, Clay says, all right, Christian, you really twisted my arm. Nicole, I'm gonna walk away now. I gave it my best. Come talk to me later. And the whole rest of the beach watches as Clay walks back in defeat. But Jordan has had enough. He is not gonna let someone like Christian walk over Clay in his athletic footwear like that. He says, Clay, you want me to wreck that piñata for you? Because I'll wreck that piñata for you. And this leads to what I think is maybe one of the most insane moments in all of Bachelor in Paradise history.
So you don't want me to go over there and wreck that piñata right now?
I do not want you to go over there and wreck the piñata. Please don't wreck the piñata.
That piñata is getting wrecked.
Oh my God.
What's happening?
No! Episode 3A. We go right back to this fight. After Jordan body slams Christian, production immediately jumps in and tries to separate them. But even then, Christian breaks away and full-on sprints towards Jordan. It takes 6 different guys tackling Christian to get him to slow down. And as much as the show loves to enable and reward toxic behavior, even the Bachelor franchise has its limits, and both Jordan and Christian are immediately sent home. Good riddance. That just leaves Clay and Nicole to immediately rekindle as one of the strongest couples in Paradise so far. Forget all about that love triangle stuff. Even though this cocktail party has been an absolute disaster, we do at least get one shining light. John Paul Jones. JPJ has memorized an entire Shakespearean sonnet to woo Tayshia.
I'll watch thee take thy places stand. The camera's like looking at me. I'm sorry. Anyway.
And oh my gosh, guys, I can't lie. All right, this moment had me kicking my feet, and it wasn't even happening to me. Tayshia and JPJ are into each other. And trust me, no one saw this coming in their Bachelor fantasy football predictions. Not even Goose. I think because Tayshia was on Colton's season of The Bachelor, everyone assumed that she would want, I don't know, like a more basic Bachelor guy, maybe somebody a little bit older. But Tayshia says that JPJ isn't just a sexy Heath Ledger lookalike. He has a brain. And let me tell you, these kinds of couples are the best part of Paradise, hands down. The ones you never expect, who never met before the show. I mean, it's taken a few episodes, but I finally have a couple to really root for. On the other hand, Onyeka, not doing so great. She was interested in JPJ, she was interested in Mike, but Cam told her that Mike only sees her as a friend. And even Cam isn't interested in wooing Onyeka. It's bad times, so Onyeka sends herself home, and honestly, I can't blame her. If Mike and JPJ friendzoned me, Demi was already taken, I'd be out. There's nothing else for me. So that just leaves 8 roses for the night. Demi gives her rose to Derek, Kaylin gives her rose to Dean, Katie gives her rose to Chris, Nicole gives her rose to Clay, Tayshia gives her rose to JPJ,
Romeo. I mean, John Paul Jones. Can you accept this rose?
Yes, queen.
and Sydney gives her rose to Mike, which makes absolutely no sense to Kevin. He would 100% pick himself over Mike.
If I was Sydney, my rose would be going to me 100%. I would love to still pursue Sydney and potentially even Christina or Kaylin.
Next up is Hannah G, who finally has to choose between Blake and Dylan. And she picks Dylan. So we finally have an end to that exhausting love triangle. And you will honestly never hear about Hannah and Dylan the rest of the season because, spoiler alert, they just have a great drama-free vacation together as a couple, and that does not make good content for this show. So the very last rose of the night is Christina. She can pick from hot available guy Wills, ABC always be Cam, Kevin, or her ex-situationship Blake. You already know, of course, she picks Blake as a friendship rose, but also she was really mad at him like a day ago. She does think he's had an unfair time on Paradise, but also now she kind of wants to watch Blake be sad over Hannah choosing Dylan over him.
I want Blake to stick around and find love, if that's what you're here for, but then Blake would have to watch Hannah and Dylan together. In a way, he's choosing to stay in his personal hell.
Honestly, still no clue what the dynamic is between these two, but there you go. So at this point, we are 2 rose ceremonies in, and we already pretty much have like all established couples, which if you watch Love Island, that is definitely the biggest difference between these two shows. People get so serious so fast around here. Chris says he's finally learned how to be a mature adult after 6 seasons of reality television. He's ready to be serious with Katie. JPJ tells Tayshia how he might look like some stoner surfer guy who pees his pants around women, but he's been waiting for a long time to settle down with someone like Tayshia. And he only throws up a little bit in the pool.
Tayshia Paul Jones.
Dylan tells Hannah that he is starting to fall in love with her, which, let me just say, bonkers. And amongst all of these couples, Blake is just hanging onto that palm tree for dear life. That Should Be Me by Justin Bieber, playing on a loop in Blake's head. But luckily for Blake, someone else is coming down the steps. Caitlyn. Now you may say, what is the difference between Caitlyn, from Colton's season, and Kaylin from Colton's season. And honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Dylan says that he hopes Caitlin doesn't get sucked into Blake's web of deceit and lies.
I think there's a really good chance that Caitlin's the next one caught in Blake's web of lust and deceit.
Like Blake's a Black Widow or something. But come on, the stagecoach stuff, that was so last week. Blake is a new person now. He did meet Caitlin at Stagecoach before, but they didn't hook up, it's fine. So Blake goes on this date with Caitlin, and he explains to Caitlin, hey, so Christina and I had this situationship thing. Caitlin hates me. Tasha hates me. I tried to go after Hannah G, and she said no, and it was really awkward. And Caitlin is like, wait, isn't this only like day 4 of Paradise? But also Blake is the only available man she can really pursue. So she's like, you know what, Blake? You were single. We all make mistakes. And Blake is like, you're right. I'm ready to forgive myself personally. His healing journey has finally begun. Y'all aren't even ready for the next person walking down the steps because it is Hannah Brown, Bachelorette extraordinaire.
How are you?
I'm great, John Paul Jones. How are you?
I'm doing terrifically well. Thank you for asking. Yes.
I've missed you, bro.
And she's in lesbian pride colors, so you know some gay shit is about to go down. She is here as a producer plant to talk to Demi about how, yes, she is still thinking about this woman back home. That has not changed in 24 hours. But we do learn some new things in this conversation. We finally learned that the woman Demi has been dating back home is named Christian with a K. Not to be confused with toxic piñata boy Christian, different person. Demi says that she knows Derek is a great guy and it isn't fair to Derek or Christian that they aren't getting her full commitment. But also, Christian isn't here on the beach. It's not like she can explore her options on the beach like everybody else on this show. For all Demi knows, she could go back to Christian and have Derek in the back of her head just as much as Christian is in the back of her head now on the beach. And even though she did already explain the situation to Derek, she pulls him again after this conversation and says, listen, I think I may have downplayed just how confused I was and how deep my feelings for Christian actually are, but I also have no idea what's happening. And Derek is like, I'm not gonna stop fighting for you, Demi, but it is sad to hear that you're still confused. I mean, not because it's a woman, Demi. I love Subarus, just want to make that clear.
It doesn't matter who this other person is, right? Like, it's just somebody else who Demi has, like, an emotional connection to.
At the end of the conversation, Demi walks off and asks one of the producers if she can talk to soon-to-be disgraced Bachelor host Chris Harrison. Yeah, you know you're down bad if you're asking that man for help. Episode 3B. Demi explains the situation again to Chris Harrison this time and says that she thought she would go to Paradise and would forget all about Christian, but it's just been the opposite since she's been here. She's only thought about Christian more since she's got here, and that's on top of the emotions of having to talk about coming out on national TV of all places. And Chris Harrison says, well, first of all, wig. Second of all, don't you worry, Demi. I'm sure the producers and I can think of a plan that will be excellent for our ratings. So later on, Chris Harrison sends Demi up the steps of Paradise. And who should be here but the woman herself, Christian. Let me tell you, Christian will be another one of my favorites on the beach this summer. When the entire beach is just straight reality TV personalities, having just one low-key queer woman hanging out with everyone, honestly, it's the vibe I want to bring to the function, but I absolutely do not. Christian and Demi are immediately in tears when they see one another. And in that moment, I realize, oh, this does not seem like the casual relationship Demi was describing earlier. Like, if her feelings were that deep, why did she still go on Paradise? Is it as shady as Jed getting full-on engaged to Hannah Brown before telling Hannah Brown about his girlfriend back home? No, like, not even close. Again, Derek and her knew each other for 3 days, and Demi told him about Christian almost immediately. But it also does seem like Derek never stood a chance in this love triangle. And won't someone please think of the handsome straight man in this scenario for once? So Demi explains to Christian that she has been getting to know this guy, Derek, on the beach. But Christian has absolutely been at the back of her mind, and seeing her now, Demi knows that Christian is the one she wants, and she needs to immediately break things off with Derek. So Demi pulls Derek, and he knows what's happening. Demi tells Derek that her and Christian are going to pursue their relationship on the beach, and she knows that's going to be hard for him. He's a great guy, and he doesn't deserve that. Derek is understandably heartbroken by this, but he really does take this news in stride. He's like, yeah, this hurts. Not because you're leaving me for a woman, okay? I love Chaperone.
And it didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. It hurt no differently.
I just want to be chosen by someone. Seriously, Derek is so understanding and forgiving that he even offers to talk things out with Christian with Demi, just so Demi can feel better. And Derek and Christian agree that there's no hard feelings between any of them. He supports their relationship, and he just wants Demi to be happy. So now we have the very first same-sex couple to ever appear in the Bachelor franchise. And this franchise has existed for 2 decades at this point. It's actually quite depressing when you think about it. It is a huge deal to finally have this kind of representation in the franchise. And the entire beach just seems incredibly happy for both of them. Christian and Demi are also given a one-on-one date where they can talk through more of their feelings. Because Christian, understandably, is still very hurt and confused that Demi pursued another relationship in Paradise. To be clear, Christian knew even from before they were dating that Demi was going to go on Paradise, and they weren't exclusive. There was nothing wrong with that. But it does also seem like they were probably more than just casually dating, whether they wanted to admit that to each other. Just given their dynamic here, the lines definitely seem to be a bit blurry. Demi also knows that both Christian and Derek were put in an unfair position here. Demi does apologize and says that she's ready to fully commit to her relationship with Christian, and just like any other couple in Paradise, we're going to see their ups and downs. Speaking of other Paradise couples, there is still plenty of straight nonsense to go around. Katie and Chris have been one of the stronger couples, but it can never be too easy here in Paradise, especially with Chris. One morning, Katie says, hey, some girls are coming down this week, I'm sure. Chris, if you want to go on a date and explore, I mean, we're on Bachelor in Paradise. I don't think it's fair of me to stop you. And Chris takes that as, well, I guess Katie isn't interested in me at all, huh? If she's not begging to time this down, I guess she doesn't care about me. So then this woman, Jen, walks down the stairs, a Bachelor in Paradise veteran who actually got engaged to Nick Viall in season 3. This woman has been through it. Obviously, that didn't work out and she's single and ready to meet someone new. Chris says, well, Katie, since you obviously don't care about me at all, I'm gonna go on this date with Jen. Meanwhile, Katie is like on the verge of tears as he's telling her about this. Like, obviously she didn't actually want him to date other people. She was just trying not to sound possessive earlier. But, you know, God forbid these two actually just have a conversation. So Chris and Jen go on a boat and it gets pretty hot and steamy. Chris gets motion sickness and is throwing up on the side of the boat the whole time. And because Chris spent the entire date throwing up, when they go back to the beach, Chris and Jen do a sort of redo of their date in one of the tree houses, which again really upsets Katie. Katie and Chris do eventually talk, and Katie is like, hey, I think you going on this date was actually really hard for me, and I really regret saying that you should go on these dates. I feel like I self-sabotaged and was insecure. And Chris is like, I don't know, Katie. How do I know you're not just saying that? Seems like I need to make out with Jen some more while you really think about what you've done. Episode 4A. So now that Demi and Christian are official, Derek is burying himself in the sand and waiting for the tide to take him away. But someone is very excited to see that Derek is newly single and full of sand. That being Tayshia. See, Tayshia and Derek actually hit it off day one, but since Derek and Demi got together pretty quickly, Tayshia never really got a chance to see if they would vibe. Tayshia does really like JPJ, but Derek is 32. He seems more put together, more grown up, more like Ryan Reynolds in a Mint Mobile ad.
I feel like Derek, he just has his stuff together.
John Paul Jones, on the other hand, is all in on Tayshia. So Tayshia sits down with JPJ and says, hey JPJ, is there anyone you want to see come down? And he's like, no, not really. I kind of just like talking to you. And Tayshia is like, well, you really should make the most of your time and like go on dates and explore your options. Cough, cough, cough. Not that I'm saying you should do that, but you should do that. The first person to walk down the steps this week is Tajwan. Tajwan left night 1 of Colton's season, and this woman is just an agent of chaos in the best possible way. She's hot. She's sweaty.
Right now I'm mainly hot, but you know, fall in love. That's the goal.
And she is ready to take John Paul Jones out on a date. John Paul Jones makes it clear he is all in on Tayshia still, but if Tayshia wants him to go on this date, he'll commit. He'll shave his nipples. He'll do whatever it takes. JPJ and Taj do have a good date. I mean, you really need to see it to believe it. And by see it, I mean see me recreate it.
So I just wanted to candidly make a cheers to my first Taj one-on-one.
Oh my god, that's good. Did you come up with that by yourself? That was good. You had help with that one. I can't. Woo, I'm sorry. That was good.
So, what is the epitomology of your name?
The origination?
Yeah.
So my dad's name is Juan Carlos.
Oh, interesting.
And so they started calling me Taj, and they just stuck Taj Juan together, and here I am.
Cool. Like, is that associated with a specific country or?
Typically Mexico.
Oh, whoa.
You know, like Juan.
Yeah.
My name's John. The Spanish name for John is Juan. It's just so funny.
Like, just out of curiosity, are you like nervous or something?
No, I'm just hot.
Oh, do you want to dig into the food? Like, I'll follow you.
No, don't eat it.
Do you know something I don't know?
Because I'm just saying you're not supposed to eat the
Why?
date food.
They just said it. We're at a restaurant.
You haven't been on a date. You haven't been on a date yet.
They just made this food.
All right, when we get back to the beach and I tell everyone you ate the date food, they're gonna give you so much.
This is real food. Are you sure you're not hungry at all?
No, I'm not eating the food. Are you? No. Do not do that.
What is this?
It looked like chicken. It might not have been chicken. I don't know. Don't. Are you serious? No. Don't eat that. No. Oh my god, why did you eat that? He's gonna be sick. Do you even know what that is? What is that? I didn't touch it. I'm not trying to get salmonella.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Sorry.
You vomit on me, we are gonna have serious issues.
I'm sorry.
He's gonna vomit. If he vomits on me, we're taking a shower together. But before Taj can tie JPJ down, another girl walks down the steps. This time it is Haley from Ben's season of The Bachelor, who was on 2 previous seasons of Bachelor in Paradise, actually with her twin sister. Haley wakes JPJ up from a nap.
Hey.
Hey.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And takes him on the steamiest date I think I've seen on Paradise in a while. JPJ says he's all in on Tayshia and this is just for fun, but JPJ and Haley are going at it on this date. The production team is making good use of that censor bar. Meanwhile, back at the beach, Taj is spiraling, and only a little bit from heat exhaustion.
These 2 lovebirds are like making out and it's 110 degrees. How can anyone do any of that? It's too hot to be touching. Why are they touching?
It is mostly from the lack of John Paul Jones, and I can't say I blame her. Haley and John Paul Jones walk down the beach rocking some Winnie the Pooh realness, I must say. And they go straight up to the bar where Taj is sitting, and this interaction, I swear to God, is like right out of Arrested Development or something. You cannot write this. How was your date?
It was a lot of fun.
What'd you guys do? We went horseback riding. Sounds lame.
Yeah. So, what else do you want to know?
Did you guys have a good time?
Yeah, it was a great time.
Great time. Did you guys kiss?
We did, yeah.
Good. Glad you guys had fun. So how many dates have you been on now?
2. So me and Taj went on 1. We had a great time last night. There was some random river in the middle of nowhere.
And then we jumped into the river.
Yeah.
Naked.
Basically, yeah.
It was close enough.
We had a great time. So, what else is good?
I'm so glad you're here, Haley. Just kidding. I was thinking, can I spit in her wine?
What?
It was just a passing thought. I would never.
I would never.
And like,
You're a pigeon. We're seagulls. I'm not gonna cry. Like, there's so much going on. Like, how do you get through this? You guys want to talk? Honestly, I'd be okay with that.
Tag yourself down below. Are you a pigeon or are you a seagull? Even though JPJ does not seem seriously interested in Haley or Taj, he definitely seems at least more interested in Haley. Well, actually, he mostly seems interested in doing cartwheels on the beach.
Oh my god, don't run into.
But that's besides the point. All this drama between Haley and Tajwan gives Tayshia the perfect opening to make her move on Derek. At first, Derek isn't sure if he even wants to stay on the beach because he's still not over what happened with Demi. But like any good Paradise contestant, within 24 hours, he has fully moved on, and Tayshia and Derek have a little kiss. One of the other roses up in the air is, once again, Blake. Caitlyn, again not to be confused with Kaylin, said she had a great date with Blake, but Christina is making things very difficult for her. See, Christina is telling everyone, Blake included, that she wants a rose from Blake, not for a romantic reason, just because she wants to stay another week and see who comes down next week. I mean, real, get your free vacation, Christina. And I know you might be thinking, weren't Christina and Blake enemies because of the whole stagecoach thing? No, apparently not. They're besties now. Forget all about that. The editing of this storyline is perfectly cohesive. Christina walks up to Blake and is like, hey Blake, how'd your time with Caitlyn go? And Blake's like, yeah, I mean, it went well, I guess, with her. And Christina is playing this game hard. She says, well, Blake, remember, her taking you on the date and you giving her a rose, that's you making it official between you two. If you don't think that Caitlyn is the one for you, you shouldn't lead her on like that. That would be very bad. Come on, Blake, don't you want to give your old pal Christina a friendship rose after all the good times we've had together? The other big drama this week is between Dean and Kaylin. Remember, this is a dating show, a Bachelor dating show specifically, where the producers still insist that everyone is here for a serious relationship, and even an engagement at the end of this. Dean, however, doesn't want to settle down for anyone. He only has room for one love in his life, his van. He's like, Kaylin, I think you would hate being my girlfriend. Like, we have fun here, but I would never date you outside of this. Don't get it twisted. But also, happy birthday, Kaylin. A word of warning for anyone who wants to go on this show. Absolutely never let the producers know it's your birthday. Birthdays on this show are absolutely cursed. But hey, we've made it to the next rose ceremony, so let's see who everyone will choose. Demi and Christian choose each other, of course. Dylan picks Hannah. Mike picks Sydney. Clay picks Nicole. Derek gives his rose to Tayshia. Chris, despite him telling Katie all week he wanted to send her home over that one comment she made, picks Katie over Jen. And yes, Blake does in fact pick Christina over Caitlyn.
Christina? Christina?
We really have each other's backs, don't we?
Haven't seen an upset from the Russians like this since the 2022 Olympics figure skating. JPJ picks Haley over Tajwan, and finally, Dean picks Kaylin. But don't forget, it's still Kaylyn's birthday, so there is still time for Dean to fuck this up. Come on, Kaylin, let's go have a chat. Nothing bad will happen, surely. Episode 4B. Yeah, so Dean dumps Kaylin on her birthday. Dean says that he didn't expect to like her as much as he did, but Kaylin could never live that van life like him. He's a free spirit, and she just shops at free people. And if they keep having fun here, they'll just be sadder when they break up later. So Dean has to trim his mustache by himself. Oh, and happy birthday, Kaylin. Dean leaves Paradise and Kaylin is distraught. I mean, I also cry on my birthday every year, but crying over a man who lives in a van on your birthday is an extra level of sadness I don't wish on anyone. But Kaylin isn't the only one sobbing on the beach. JPJ is having a full-on breakdown, which we have never seen before.
Dude, you're gonna come out of this so much stronger.
JPJ just can't sit back and watch Tayshia, the woman he says he's falling in love with, go for someone like Derek. Haley is great and all, but he just does not feel the same way about her. He was trying to be a good guy, going on these dates, but now he's just in a bad spot. His nose is full of snot, and his heart is full of sadness. But let's get these sad boys all dolled up because they are all invited to a Bachelor Nation wedding. Chris and Crystal from season 5 of Bachelor in Paradise are having their wedding in Mexico, where they got engaged just last year. It is all televised and hosted by everyone's second favorite Bachelor host, Chris Harrison. Hey man, weddings are expensive, so if I have to have Bachelor Nation influencers fighting at my wedding to get it comped, I'm fine with it. Call me, ABC. Honestly, if you want, I'll even join in on the fights. I don't care. Clay, however, is very nervous to go to this wedding. Remember how Clay dated another woman from Bachelor Nation, Angela, 3 months before he came on the show? Well, the bride and groom of this wedding were actually the ones who introduced Clay and Angela. Angela is going to be a bridesmaid at this wedding, and it is the first time Clay will have seen her since the breakup, and now his new girlfriend, Nicole, is going to meet his ex-girlfriend, Angela. So the gang all arrives at the wedding and your favorite couples from Bachelor Nation are there. But JPJ has no time to waste. He needs to ruin the vibes immediately. Because you see, JPJ has suddenly become aware that Derek is actually the worst man in the world, and he needs to tell Tayshia about this immediately.
Derek is that creepy guy that, graduated high school 5 years ago and comes back to the high school parties despite the fact he's a grown-ass man. He's creepy, quite frankly.
He says that he's been living with Derek since day one on the show, and at one point, allegedly, Derek told John Paul Jones that Derek likes to hook up with fans who DM him. But it gets worse. Derek has a podcast, I know. And JPJ knows that Derek is only switching from Demi to Tayshia for that juicy podcast content. John Paul Jones cares very deeply about this right now that Tayshia is interested in Derek. John Paul Jones even walks up to Demi and is like, hey, Demi, don't you kind of think that Derek was the worst? And Demi was like, no, he was literally the nicest. I ditched him to be with Christian and he was super understanding. I get zero bad vibes from this guy.
Derek ever rub you the wrong way? This guy's kind of weird, sort of.
No, he's really awesome about it.
Well, anyway, he has a podcast.
But forget all about that. JPJ needs to warn Tayshia right now. And there is no better time to do that than right before the ceremony is about to start. So John Paul Jones sits down next to Tayshia and is like, Tayshia, I care about you a lot. And I just don't think you should be with that slimy little guy. I hate him. I hate his little mouth. I hate his little button-up shirt. You shouldn't be interested in him, Tayshia. And Tayshia, rightfully so, I might add, is like, John Paul Jones, we're not doing this right now. I respect what you have to say, but please, any other time and place, because the wedding ceremony is about to start. Angela, of course, walks down the aisle and she is just mewing, mogging people left and right. It's honestly kind of a slaughter, and God bless, I would do the exact same thing if my ex was on a televised wedding with me. Then Chris Harrison comes out and tells the love story of Chris and Crystal.
Bonding over things such as green smoothies, apple cider vinegar, essential oils,
MLMs, native deodorant, psychedelic tapestries. Then they have a smudging ceremony, which I think is intended, at least by Chris and Crystal, to be a serious moment, but it ends up just being a bunch of white people uncomfortably giggling at an actual Native American cultural practice.
of the sacred herb. Really get in there.
Yeah. Listen, it wouldn't be a Bachelor show if there wasn't at least a little bit of cultural appropriation. That's the Bachelor tradition at this point. During the cocktail hour, JPJ decides that it is time to actually confront Derek. And while I understand that this exchange is incredibly toxic, I do kind of get a kick out of it.
Let me ask you something. What exactly are your intentions with Tayshia? I know this podcast is a big part of your life. You've mentioned it to me multiple times.
Okay.
You've talked about bringing me on the show. I haven't expressed any interest, but you've talked about it on your own accord. You've also expressed that you're using your status to hook up with women who are infatuated with public figures, Derek. I think that's information. Hold on. No, don't hold on with me, Derek. You don't get to. No. You don't get to bulldoze through that statement. Bulldozing. I'm not bulldozing. If you're not allowing me to talk. You told me that statement. Name one thing I said that's false, Derek. Don't insult my intelligence, Derek. I'm not insulting your intelligence. Name one thing that I just mentioned that's false, Derek. You're full of You're in this for fame. You take advantage of women. You are not in this for the right reasons. You're not allowing me to speak. All you say is you're not allowing me to speak. You're just trying to think of a excuse. Just like the reason you're on here, man.
You're not willing to talk to me and you're just gonna angrily
Name
dismiss
one thing
me,
you
then
said that was false. All of that is false.
Okay, so first of all,
you said verbatim to me, you can some of those women.
I did not
You think
say
Tasha
that.
would like that? Why don't you go tell
And I
Tasha?
told you.
You think I give a
Are you
damn,
serious?
Derek? Look, Derek, I'm 24 years old. I've been looking for my wife for 18 years. I didn't come here to around. I don't have a podcast. Seeing you manipulate Tasha makes me sick. Get out of my sight.
Listen, y'all know I love John Paul Jones, but he is absolutely in the wrong here. Even if it were true that Derek was a creep who was only on this show for clout, it's very convenient that JPJ only cares about that once Derek is interested in the same girl as him. Not to mention they're doing this at someone's actual wedding. Granted, I'm sure the producers wanted exactly this to happen, but come on, this is feral behavior from John Paul Jones. Luckily though for Chris and Crystal, their contract with ABC lets them send home half the Bachelor in Paradise contestants for the actual after party. So only Hannah G, Dylan, Kaylin, Blake, Christina, Tasha, Mike, and Clay are invited to the reception and after-hours swinger event. But that means that Clay is going to be at this reception with his ex-girlfriend without his new girlfriend, Nicole. And rest assured, Nicole will be thinking about this the entire night back at the beach. Clay and Angela do actually have a chat at the reception, and the vibes of this conversation are weird. Angela says that she just can't imagine talking to someone else so soon after what they had. She says that he ended things with her, but she didn't decide to end things. And Clay in this conversation doesn't really put his foot down and say like, hey, things are over, I'm with Nicole now. Like, he does mention that he's seeing someone else. He's not like flirting with Angela or trying to rekindle anything, but he seems like worried about hurting Angela's feelings and telling her straight up that it's over between them, to the point where he's not being direct and just shutting the conversation down when he absolutely should. I mean, they're broken up. They don't need to rehash how badly they think the breakup went, and Angela doesn't need to approve of how he moves on, even if he didn't handle the initial breakup well. But Angela is not the only Bachelor Nation face getting some airtime tonight. Connor from Hannah B's season of The Bachelorette is also at this wedding. If you're not familiar, Connor is basically if Crush the turtle from Finding Nemo was a person.
But I'm really excited about this. We had a good conversation. Sealed it with a solid kiss.
He seems like a very sweet guy, and Kaylin could use a little distraction from her Dean breakup. So Connor and Kaylin start flirting at the wedding. It's just too bad that Connor isn't actually on the beach. Maybe this could go somewhere. Speaking of the beach, the rest of the group sadly walks up to the bar to complain to Wells about not being invited to the cool kids table at the wedding. Derek walks up and is like, yeah, Wells, JPJ was like doing the most at the wedding, but hey, maybe JPJ has had some time to cool off in the ride home. JPJ also walks up to the bar and is like, yeah, man, I had a great day. I meant everything I said. I took out the trash today and it felt good. Derek, you're a scummy guy. You invited me to go on your podcast and I'm not going to make content for your podcast. And Derek is like, come on, man. I thought we were friends. I invited you on my podcast because we're friends. Let's talk this out, maybe in an audio-based medium. I don't know. But JPJ is not backing down.
I don't want to be on your podcast, dude.
I don't care about you being on my podcast. Honestly, John, I was trying to give you a fun experience.
The next morning, who should walk down the steps of paradise but Connor? Who could have predicted this? Christina, for a second, does think that maybe Connor is going to take her on the date since they also hit it off at the wedding that night. But Connor takes Kaylin on this date. Connor and Kaylin have one of the obligatory bachelor dates where they have to paint all over each other's bodies because there's nothing like paint fumes to really bring two people together. Kaylin is like, you know what, Connor? I'm so over Dean. Let's pursue this. Be serious about this. And Connor's like, yeah, man, that sounds great. Just don't lie to me, Kaylin, ever. That's... Is that Californian? I don't know what that was. And Kaylin's like, I would never lie to you, Connor. I have absolutely no residual feelings for Dean whatsoever. Nicole is also still feeling very anxious about what happened at the wedding with Clay and Angela. Clay tells Nicole, yeah, it was weird seeing her, but like, I'm not interested in Angela. I told Angela about you, we're good. Which to Nicole sounds like Clay might still be interested in Angela. And we'll be putting that theory to the test by sending Angela down the steps right now. Episode 5A. Angela is here, and I feel like immediately everyone on the beach just went, ooh. Awkward. Also, whenever Angela's back is turned, Nicole is just making snarky comments about Angela's looks to Tayshia, which does not make Nicole look like the bigger person.
She has no body mass. No. She needs some Cuban meat on her butt. I don't even want to look at her creepy bouncy curls and her creepy smile and her perfect little everything.
Nicole pulls Angela aside and is like, "Hi, I'm Clay's girlfriend. He's my boyfriend. Just, we are dating and together. Angela, stay away from my man." And Angela is like, "Don't worry, I'm not a drama person. I just came on the same reality show as my recent ex-boyfriend. Nothing to worry about." And I mean, to be fair, Clay is here. Clay can go on dates. Why can't Angela? So Angela actually takes Mike Johnson on a date. But you forgot Mike Johnson is still on this season. The reason I haven't mentioned Mike Johnson in forever is not because I don't love him. Y'all know I do. It's because Mike Johnson and Sydney got together and they showed absolutely none of it. And then Sydney and Mike Johnson broke up off screen. We only know that they broke up because Tayshia tells us in one of her interviews that they broke it off. We have absolutely zero details about what Mike has been up to this whole time. It's like the producers wanted to appease the Mike Johnson fans by inviting him on Paradise, giving people hope that this was his trial run for The Bachelor, and then they just immediately shoved him in the corner. I mean, at least now they're showing me more Mike Johnson, but under these circumstances, shame on you, Bachelor producers. Mike and Angela have a pretty awkward date. Mike's like, "Hey, so Angela, why are you here right now? All we've ever heard about you is that you're really not over Clay." And Angela is like, "Yeah, to be honest, breaking up with him was like the worst day of my life, but hey, Clay is here after we dated, so why can't I be here?" And then Mike hits her with the most brutal line. Mike says, "Well, I think Clay can be here because he never told you that he was in love with you." My God, I would never recover from Mike Johnson saying that to me. But also, both Clay and Angela said they dated for 8 months. They were looking at houses, talking about kids, and Clay never once told Angela that he loved her. This moment gets pretty brushed over in the show, but it definitely made me side-eye Clay hearing that, because how serious is Clay actually about settling down if he won't actually say that he loves somebody? Clay and Nicole are honestly just such a hard couple to watch because they're so immature for completely different reasons, and you just know that they're not going to work in the real world, so what's the point? But let's not forget about the insanity that was John Paul Jones and Derek. It's not over yet. Haley has no idea that John Paul Jones likes Tayshia. She's been chilling. She had a great date with John Paul Jones. He gave her a rose. She has no idea why he would blow up at his bestie Derek like that the other night. Well, Derek decides, hey, if John Paul Jones can be messy, so can I. Derek sits down next to Haley and is like, "Yeah, Haley, it's crazy that stuff that happened with John Paul Jones. I guess it's because he's secretly so in love with Tayshia. Oh my God, you didn't know that, Haley? That's so crazy. I hope you don't yell at John Paul Jones right now."
Apparently he's super into Tayshia, which seems
he is. Really?
Right?
Haley is understandably very hurt and confused by this. John Paul Jones did initially say, when she came up on the beach, that he had a connection with Tayshia, but apparently since that moment, he has never said anything about having, serious feelings for Tayshia, and Tayshia didn't mention that Tayshia and JPJ had a thing to Haley either. John Paul Jones does sort of apologize to Haley when she tells him what she heard, and he's like, "Honestly, Haley, we had a great date. I'm just more drawn to Tayshia. I can't help it. But you know what, Haley? You know what really matters here? It was not Derek's place to tell you that. Derek is the real evil mastermind here. Don't insult my intelligence, Derek." Even later that night, John Paul Jones has the gall to again talk shit about Derek right next to Haley, and he's like, "Derek just uses women for sex and podcast clout." And Haley is like, "Well, John Paul Jones, didn't you use me for a rose?" Honestly, get him, Haley. The best part of this conversation is Christian and Demi making faces behind John Paul Jones.
Why would you say yes to my date?
Well, so it's taken into consideration. Yeah, well.
Then take your rose just for fun. Selfish.
Well, I don't know if selfish is the right word.
What word?
I wanted to wait until I had a clear conscience to sort of communicate, my, sort of where I stood in terms of my feelings for you.
They're just sitting back watching the drama unfold. JPJ does apologize again, but he immediately ruins his apology by saying, "Well, Haley, you're a big girl. You can find someone else to give a rose to. Don't put that on me." It's a rough episode to be a John Paul Jones fan, guys. He is acting a fool, honestly. And it continues because, of course, since Derek told Haley about the JPJ Tayshia situation, now John Paul Jones has even more ammo for petty arguments with Derek. So Derek tries to pull John Paul Jones to have a civil conversation, and it immediately devolves once again.
My reputation is impeccable.
Don't get that close to me. This is us talking.
I did not even get
You
close
just
to you.
spit on my face.
It's just like, podcast, Haley, Tayshia, back away from me, bro.
Come on, me as you fly by and leave.
This has got to be the most unattractive thing ever, right?
Oh, it's such a turn off.
Right, okay.
At this point, Tayshia has the ick from both of them. They're both acting like middle school children, and if she wants to actually date either of them, she's gonna need to sit them down and put them in their place. But before we can do that, two hot new singles are walking down to the beach for a spicy date. It is Matt Donald and Mouse Detective himself, Luke S. from Hannah B's season. I don't think I mentioned Matt Donald in my recap. He went home night one, and he gave a beautiful rendition of Old MacDonald.
I'm Matt Donald, and I'm really nervous, and I hope I catch your eye.
Luke S., of course, tequila extraordinaire.
Let me just tell you, man, karma is a bitch, and you're gonna get yours.
And unfortunately to a lot of these women, kind of a discount Nick Viall.
It's like Nick Viall was back in paradise. Luke reminded me of my ex, Nick Viall.
Yeah.
He's the poor man's Nick V.
Being below Nick Viall of all people is not an ideal way to start, let's just say. Matt and Luke pick Sydney and Christina to go on their double date, and the vibes are awkward. Turns out eating a bunch of spicy peppers in 100-degree weather isn't really the most romantic thing.
My mouth's on fire, yeah. My mouth's very much on fire right now. And I'm also sweating a lot, so that's nice too.
Every orifice in my body is just like something's coming out of it.
Sydney does try very subtly to signal to Matt that she wants him to kiss her.
Like kiss. Kiss. Yeah.
I like that.
But it's not happening. Meanwhile, Christina talks to Luke S., and she talks for just a bit too long about her and Blake and how they were in a situationship before they came on the show. And even though she again insists she does not have feelings for Blake, Luke S. thinks that she might have feelings for Blake. So not a lot of romance happening on this double date. Finally, Tayshia pulls John Paul Jones aside and is like, "Hey, bud. You gotta stop this, okay? This is a lot. Involving Haley in this situation wasn't cool. You're both acting immature." But then John Paul Jones just starts immediately sobbing. He's like, "I'm just looking for my wife, Tayshia. I'm sorry, I just care about you so much." Honestly, Tayshia lets him off way too easy from this because this is not the JPJ I have a parasocial relationship with. I cannot defend this mess. So Tayshia then pulls Derek to talk. And y'all ready for a top 10 anime plot twist? Tayshia dumps Derek. She says, "Hey, nothing to do with John Paul Jones or anything, but like, I'm not feeling this. I don't know. Maybe it's the podcast. You're a great guy though." And Derek is like, "You know what? I've gotten enough airtime at this point. I'm out." And I mean, if I were Derek, I wouldn't want to stay any longer. Deadpool has been through it this season. He needs a break. Episode 5B. I mean, regardless of why Derek left, everyone still knows that John Paul Jones was acting like a hot mess. So both Chris and Demi have to sit John Paul Jones down and give him some good old-fashioned gentle parenting.
And I'm not saying what you did is wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, you may look back and be like, I could have handled that differently.
Sometimes we let our emotions like run so strong in us and we do things that we're not proud of. But the only thing you can do is want to be better.
And now that he physically can't yell at Derek anymore, John Paul Jones has finally calmed down and realized that all of his shenanigans have really been hard on Tayshia and everyone else at the beach. So John Paul Jones and Tayshia sit down to decompress, and Tayshia says, "JPJ, I appreciate how much you care about me, but you didn't know my relationship with Derek, and all of your antics made me feel pressured to make a decision about him. Don't do that again." And JPJ is like, "You know what? I totally understand, Tayshia. Also, watch me catch this fish right out of the ocean. Does that change things for you?"
I caught a fish! Touch it and kiss it. Yeah, wait, you have to kiss it.
Somehow, it seems like JPJ and Tayshia are able to pick up right where they left off, and a ton of other couples are progressing at this point. Hannah and Dylan are talking about her moving out to California to be with Dylan after the show. Chris has asked Katie to be his girlfriend. Demi is grateful that she's been able to come out to so many people with Christian by her side, and Kaylin's forgotten all about Dean and is all in on Connor. Well, Blake's still all alone. Somehow Blake has managed to burn just about every bridge since day one and still be here near the end of paradise, alone. And that's when inspiration strikes. What about Christina?
Oh my God, she's right there. Christina, she's been right there this whole time.
His ex-situationship who has been here and single the entire time. She's been right in front of him. Let's give it a shot. Christina responds to this romantic confession by Blake the way your friend responds to you asking to dog sit last minute. Sure, I guess, if no one else is around.
Can't stop thinking about you. It's driving me crazy.
I don't know. This is weird.
I know. I don't know why.
And I know some of you are wondering, isn't Kaylin gonna be super upset about this? Didn't Blake, Christina, and Kaylin have a giant blowout at the beginning of this season? But no, Kaylin's like, I want Blake to find his person, and if that's Christina, good for him. I don't think I will ever understand the dynamic between these three. I've given up at this point. Speaking of confusing dynamics, Angela and Clay. Mike is like, Clay, you gotta talk to Angela, because y'all somehow still have not cleared the air on your breakup. And by the way, at this point, another guy, Chase, has arrived on the beach, and Angela has just been chilling with this guy, Chase, minding her business. She has not been bothering Clay at all. But Clay pulls Angela aside again the night of the rose ceremony, and they just have the weirdest conversation. Clay is like, listen, Angela, we broke up because we have different goals. You wouldn't come to the gym with me when we were together. And Angela is like, Clay, you're an NFL player. You were at the gym for 6 hours. Why does this matter? And Clay is like, listen, you're not understanding. Clearly, you just wanted to be a wife and a mother, and I want more than that.
Your goal is to be a wife and a mother, and I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
But, like, for me, what I discovered was I want more.
Whatever that fucking means. Honestly, I think because Clay is so soft-spoken, people don't really notice the weird toxic vibes he gives off sometimes. Like, what is this conversation doing for anybody? Angela is like, listen, can we just coexist on this beach? I date people, you date people, we leave each other alone. After Clay talking all season about how desperate Angela was for him, how messy Angela was, I'm fully on Angela's side in all this. Now it is time for the next rose ceremony. The women have the roses, and the pairings are Katie and Chris, Hannah and Dylan, Kaylin and Connor, Tayshia and JPJ, Demi and Christian, Nicole and Clay, Angela and Chase, Haley and Luguez, Sydney and Matt, and Christina and Blake. Which means the only man not getting a rose this week is Mike Johnson. I'm sorry, all the women fumbled that so hard. And so did the producers. This man could have been the Bachelor, but they gave us this instead. Disgraceful. The next morning, Bree comes down the steps. She is from Colton's season, and she is best known for faking an Australian accent to get Colton's attention.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You got a nice accent. Where are you from?
The accent is Australian. I was hoping that you're kind of a sucker for accents.
I
didn't know
am.
what you think about it.
I love it.
I'm not really Australian.
You could say she's like the Clinton Kane of Bachelor Nation. At first, Christina is stressed because she is convinced that Blake is going to go on this date with Bree. But Blake has retired from his old ways. He's a one-woman man now, and he is locked in on Christina. So Bree takes Matt Donald on the date, who's just like, gee willikers, I can't believe I'm on a date with a supermodel.
So help me God, if I walk away from this with a supermodel girlfriend...
Bree might as well be going on a date with a newsie at this point. Back at the beach, Kaylin and Connor are talking about going to the Boom Boom Room tonight. Not only can they get some privacy in there, but it's also the only place with some air conditioning on this godforsaken beach. And just when you think it's over, a man walks down the stairs. A man who looks suspiciously like Dean if Dean didn't have a mustache. Turns out that after dumping Kaylin on her birthday, Dean went to the Grand Canyon, had some mushrooms, and unlocked empathy. He realizes that he made a mistake, and he wants Kaylin to run away with him in his van and be his girlfriend right now. Blake and Christina are so upset to see that Dean is back here messing with Kaylin again.
Seeing Dean come back to the beach, my first thought is concern, like, why is he back?
Like, Kaylin has been through so much down here.
Because Kaylin, Blake, and Christina are all friends now, remember? It totally makes sense. Connor is not threatened by this man. Without his mustache, He's powerless.
He left. He shouldn't be here. Like, go back to your van.
The other girls on the beach, however, are not as convinced. They know how crazy Kaylin was for Dean, and they are openly discussing how much Kaylin likes Dean 10 feet away from where Sad Crush the Turtle is sitting right now.
You think she likes Dean more?
Oh, yeah. They have passion. I'm not kidding. I feel like her heart is meant with me.
Episode 6A. Christina is actually the only one to really call Dean out to his face. She tells him this is so unfair of you to just show up like this, give Kaylin an ultimatum when you know that she's been forming something real with Connor. And remember, Christine and Dean dated in the last season of Paradise. She knows that Dean has always been wishy-washy in the past about commitment. I mean, really, this guy thinks that he can just show up and win Kaylin back like that. Oh, and they are making out. Oh, they're gone. Poor Connor, he never stood a chance. It's honestly a pretty rough time on the beach this week. Katie is all in on Chris, their boyfriend and girlfriend, but Chris just seems totally checked out of this relationship. Poor Katie is like, I know he cares about me, he just, shows it in different ways. His way of showing love is disassociating in the corner. I'm sure it's fine. Demi is also really struggling this week. Demi has been having a hard time with the affection between her and Christian. See, Christian has been out for a few years at this point, and she is much more comfortable with PDA than Demi is. Christian's also just a very affectionate person, and she's not flirting with the other women on the beach, but she'll, give someone a hug, touch their shoulder when they're joking around. To Demi, it feels like because Christian isn't getting the physical affection she would want from Demi, she's seeking it out from other women. But on a deeper level, it seems like Demi is really having to face just how hard it is to constantly be out in front of your friends, in front of cameras.
I want to give her what she needs, but I'm still uncomfortable with it just because I don't want people to be like, that's weird. And I don't want people to stare and be like, oh my God, they're kissing,
And her own discomfort with her identity is making her feel insecure in her relationship. She wants to be affectionate with Christian, but there are these walls up. And especially when you're dealing with insecurity in yourself, it's not always easy to differentiate when queer women are being flirty versus when they're being platonic. Demi and Christian are able to have a very vulnerable conversation about all of this, and Christian seems incredibly understanding. She says, I know what you're going through. I went through the same thing when I first came out. I'm not looking for affection from other people. I'm happy with you, and I want to be comfortable moving at your pace. And now that I know that my affection with my friends makes you feel a certain way, we can address that together. And it's honestly so refreshing to see Demi not in this Demi TV persona she put on basically all of Colton's season, and just be honest with how she's actually feeling and how she's struggling. Not to mention, this really is the first time the Bachelor franchise is having conversations about queer relationships, internalized homophobia. It really does make me wish that every season of the Bachelor franchise could be just a little gay. Come on. Back at the beach, Blake is still all in on Christina. He has had a rough go on Paradise, and he is ready to actually find love this time. So Blake sets up his cute little date night for him and Christina. But oh no. Christina doesn't think that they can get there. Which from an outside perspective, duh. I think with all their history, if they were going to be together at some point, they would have already. But it does genuinely suck to see how sad Blake and Christina are at the end of this. Whatever baggage Blake came into Paradise with, it does seem like he really did want to find a relationship here. But it's time for both of them to finally call it quits. And they both leave Paradise in tears. Yeah, this episode has been kind of a downer. We need someone like John Paul Jones to pick us all up right now. The other day, Tayshia told John Paul Jones how she never got to go to her high school prom. So JPJ has thrown Tayshia her very own Paradise prom to make it up to her.
Tayshia, let's finish this line so we can dance the saxophone. Yeah, let's go.
Y'all, I know this is such whiplash from how they were 2 episodes ago, but this is some of the cutest shit I've ever seen, okay? They are so giggly around each other, it's actually crazy. Episode 6B. Alright, it's the episode before the finale, which means it is going to be an absolute slaughter. Any couples the producers don't think are going to be in a relationship at the end of this have got to get out of here. If Neil Lane sees one single person, he's gonna lose it. So let's go through the breakup Olympics. First, Connor. Connor is still here. So Connor goes on a date with a woman named Revian, only for Revian to immediately disappear from our screens the second she's introduced. So since Connor doesn't have any real connections, he decides that he's gonna head out. Maybe he'll have better luck in his Instagram DMs. But wait, Whitney, a woman from a few seasons ago, who was also at the wedding, is coming to the beach just to meet Connor. And the producers managed to set up the perfect saw trap by sending Whitney immediately after Connor decided to leave. Connor's already gone. Everyone on the beach is like, go after him, Whitney. Go get this man you had small talk with once at a wedding. That's what love's about. At the rose ceremony that night, Chris Harrison says, listen, losers, if you're not gonna put a ring on it, you're going home. So all of you accepting roses tonight, just know you're making a commitment for life here, all right? Don't waste my time. Luke S., why don't you start? Oh my God, guys, this is brutal. Luke S. asks if Bree will accept his rose, and Bree says, no thanks, actually. And then Chris Harrison walks to stand up next to Luke and is like, well, does anyone want Despero over here?
Is there anyone else who would like Luke's rose tonight? Anyone? All right. Unfortunately, if you're not in a relationship.
Absolutely, Chris.
And just like that, Luke S. goes home. The rest of the rose ceremony, however, goes as expected. Demi and Christian, Hannah and Dylan, Tayshia and JPJ, Clay and Nicole, Katie and Chris, Angela and Chase. The last rose is from Matt, who is choosing between cool, nice girl Sydney, who has somehow managed to be here from day one with 0 screen time, and supermodel Bree. Matt chooses Bree, which is so crazy because he could have a supermodel girlfriend at the end of this. Things are looking up for old Matt Donald.
She's so much more than just a supermodel. She's awesome.
But the next night is fantasy suites, which means the couples again have to decide if they actually want to be in a relationship or if they're ready to go back to their podcasts and Fit Tea sponsorships. Matt is stoked. He picked a supermodel last night.
You look beautiful, as always.
Thank you.
Supermodel.
You and the supermodel.
Except Bree says that she feels like Matt only likes her for her looks and not for who she actually is. Maybe it has something to do with him calling her a supermodel over and over again. So those two go home. Chase and Angela just kind of look at each other and go, meh, let's just go home. I'm done with this. They're gone. Chris is on the fence. He really likes Katie, in theory. But you know, sometimes she does annoying stuff like compliment him.
You look so handsome.
Stop.
What? What do you mean stop?
You count me all the time.
Honestly, she's such a drag. But hey, fantasy suites sound pretty fun. Sure, Katie, I'll go with you, I guess. Seriously, justice for Katie. Demi and Christian are also struggling pretty much for the same reasons we talked about earlier. Demi is still dealing with her insecurities about being out, but that also puts Christian in a tough spot because now Christian feels like she can't express her concerns about their relationship without adding to Demi's stress. Demi and Christian are seemingly able to talk this out, and Demi assures Christian that she appreciates Christian being strong for both of them, and Demi wants to be able to give this relationship 100%. So they're a lock for fantasy suites. Hannah and Dylan. There was absolutely no question that they were going to go to fantasy suites. They've told each other they love each other. I mean, Dylan almost even said that he loved Hannah in Spanish.
Me llamo Hannah.
Me llamo Dylan.
Nicole, however, is very stressed because even though Clay says that he's falling in love with Nicole, he's not in love with Nicole, which is very different in Bachelor Nation. Considering he dated Angela for 8 months without saying I love you to her once, not too surprising that he won't say it within 3 weeks, but Nicole, for some reason, thinks that she can turn this around and get him to say I love you tomorrow. So they're going to fantasy suites. That just leaves Tayshia and JPJ. Last night, Tayshia surprised JPJ with a romantic recreation of Titanic.
I need you to lay across the bed.
Oh, like Titanic?
Yep. You're like an iceberg, JPJ. There's like stuff on the surface, but there's so much more below, you know?
JPJ even brought out his special denim Speedo to show his appreciation for her. John Paul Jones tells Tayshia that he's in love with her, and he wants to dance at their wedding the way they danced at prom together. But tragically, Tayshia says that as much as she cherishes her time with John Paul Jones, she just can't say that she loves him back, and she doesn't think that she can get there in time. So, John Paul Jones starts walking away to go home. And Tayshia fully starts running after him in tears, like it's so cinematic. I'm not even joking. I know, I should not be rooting for this relationship, but it hurts my heart. I can't lie. John Paul Jones picks up Tayshia and carries her over to the shade so that she doesn't burn her feet, and then he just says goodbye. John Paul Jones and Tayshia leave paradise alone. The finale. It is finally time to see how the fantasy suites go and if the final 4 couples get engaged. For the most part, it seems like everyone has a great night. Except, of course, for Nicole and Clay. Nicole is like, oh, Clay, isn't it so great how we're going to be engaged and in love and I'm going to move to Chicago to be with you? And Clay is like, well, you see, Nicole, you know how I've told you like a million times that I never said I love you to Angela and how I'm kind of a commitment phobe? I don't think I'm moving as fast as you are, Nicole. And don't get me wrong, that has to be incredibly hurtful to see someone you love not be as committed to your relationship as you are. Especially if you're going into this thinking there's going to be an engagement the next day. But Nicole says that she can't believe Clay would lead her on like this. And I just have to say, the signs have been there, Nicole. I don't know what to tell you. And I have to say, the Bachelor editing team really stepped it up with this evil cut because they show all of the other couples having the time of their lives in these hotel rooms, cut between Nicole watching fireworks alone. I mean, just brutal. The next morning, Nicole is the first one to walk down the steps to see if Clay will propose to her. And yeah, he doesn't. Of course, not getting engaged 3 weeks into dating for most people is not a deal breaker, but Nicole says that she can't accept this. She wants a love so deep that the ocean is jealous.
Yes, I am. And I deserve a love that is so deep the ocean would be jealous.
I can't believe she stole that line from my 2014 John Locke fanfiction. I mean, where's my royalties? But at the end, she says, I can't believe this. Now I know how Angela feels.
I totally relate to Angela now because he had no intentions of being 100% serious with me. I just can't believe it.
As if Nicole wasn't bullying Angela with Tayshia for days on end like last week. And if you're wondering what these two have to say about all of this during the reunion, we don't know. They completely cut Clay and Nicole out of the reunion. I guess even the editing team knew I'd had enough. But Chris and Katie, Hannah and Dylan, and Demi and Christian all get engaged on the beach, making this the most engagements since season 1 of the show. And, of course, the first queer engagement in Bachelor history, which is really sad because it's been 5 years since this aired, and we haven't even come close to a second one. Next, we cut to the reunion a few months after the beach. And listen, reunions are always messy. This one in particular is hard to watch. There's just like a dark energy to it that I feel like I can't quite explain. First of all, Jordan and Christian, not Demi's Christian, the pinata guy Christian. Jordan and Christian again almost get into a fist fight on stage, and that is deeply uncomfortable to watch. Derek asks if John Paul Jones would like to apologize about starting a fight at Chris and Crystal's wedding, and John Paul Jones is just like, what happened was unfortunate.
Would you like to apologize?
I think what happened was unfortunate.
All right.
Jordan also steps into this conversation to say, hey, Derek, it's totally okay if you sleep with fans in your DMs. I mean, Instagram DMs are basically a dating app anyway.
Hold on, this is ridiculous. It's totally out of context. It's out of context. And, you know, social media has become a lot like a dating app. And people do reach out to each other.
Okay, James Charles, who asked? Then there's the Blake of it all. Since the show aired, Blake released the text messages, which, at least from what we saw, showed that Kaylin initiated the hookup during Stagecoach and said it was casual explicitly. And the text also showed that Blake didn't ghost her and force her to keep it a secret. They seemed to mutually agree not to make it a big deal and to be honest if it came up organically. Blake also points out that his relationship with Kaylin was also right around the time Kaylin went on the reunion for Colton's season, where she cried over her heartbreak with Colton, even though Colton had already set her up with Blake before that happened. So she's like crying about how she's not over Colton supposedly. Meanwhile, she's fully like talking to Blake. So even though Blake very much got a villain edit on the show when it aired, the popular opinion outside of the show had drastically shifted in Blake's favor by the time we got to the reunion. And it also probably didn't help that Connor was such a fan favorite, and even Kaylin agrees that she did Connor dirty. So Blake gets in the hot seat and explains his thought process behind airing the text messages. He explains that if he had tried to say that Kaylin initiated their hookup, people would not believe him, and people would not understand why Blake was shocked when she confronted him at the beach. I also don't love people posting private text messages. I can see from Blake's perspective how it feels like Kaylin started all of this by like making this such a big thing on the show, and he felt like he had no other choice. He does also explain that he deleted the text messages from his story shortly after because he saw that Kaylin was getting slut-shamed and attacked, and he didn't want that, and he does apologize to Kaylin for having to go through that. And honestly, whether he deleted them or not was kind of a moot point because they were already in like major publications all over Reddit. It didn't matter whether they were on his story anymore. But the thing is, the entire cast and Kaylin seem to equate Blake posting these private text messages with Kaylin to what Kaylin did to Blake on the beach by saying that he seduced her and ghosted her and forced her to keep this secret against her will. Kaylin says, I understand, I overreacted, I'm sorry, but I've never felt more violated than when you released those texts. And Blake is like, Kaylin, I messaged you before we came on the beach and we agreed to not make it a big deal. Genuinely, what else could I have communicated to prevent the blow up on the beach from happening? And Kaylin doesn't have an answer for that question. I mean, no one even asks why it seems like she misrepresented what happened or why it doesn't line up with what's said in the text. Everyone in the cast is just like, come on, Blake. She made some mistakes and she sort of said that she's sorry. Just be the bigger man and apologize. And genuinely, it feels deeply uncomfortable watching this because it really does feel like Blake is being ganged up on when we know that he also was being attacked online just as much as Kaylin was. And Blake is more apologetic throughout this entire thing in the reunion and on the show than people who went on the show and objectively did way worse things. Like, did we get this many apologies from Jed when he was on the show? I do think that Blake probably let the fame of being a fan favorite get to his head. Even if he was single, it's not hard to see how talking to or hooking up with 3 people who were all going to be on a dating reality show with you a few weeks later would lead to hurt feelings. But everyone is acting like Blake killed someone when other people involved were just as, if not more, messy, and I don't get it. But the bad vibes are not over yet. Katie comes out to the hot seat and Chris Harrison notices that she is not wearing her engagement ring. Katie is very emotional. Demi is very emotional watching Katie. And Katie talks about how she feels like she's been giving this relationship her all and just not getting anything in return. She knows that Chris can be a good man and she'll get glimpses of that and she'll hold on to those glimpses until she's almost ready to leave. And then it's another glimpse, and it's like this vicious cycle. Katie also says that she thought she would watch the show back and see this beautiful love story between her and Chris and see how much Chris cared about her. But a lot of the time on the show, Chris just seemed indifferent at best. So Chris comes out to the hot seat, and while I'm not the biggest Chris fan, I also do feel kind of bad for him because Chris Harrison is just like, hey, you fucked up this relationship with Katie. And Chris does seem like caught off guard that they're having this conversation in public. They do this weird stage thing where they have the PA bring back Katie's ring so Chris can put it back on her hand and like pretend that all their problems are solved, only for them to again immediately fight backstage. I realize this show is about seeing the details of people's messy relationships, but this bit just feels like we're seeing a very private conversation in public when we should not be. Luckily though, this reunion isn't complete doom and gloom. Hannah and Dylan come out and they're still doing great. Christian proposes to Demi to give us the second queer engagement in Bachelor history. There you go, representation. And it's really unfortunate that this show is sponsored by Neil Lane because even though those rings I'm sure are worth more than my home, they are the straightest engagement rings I have ever seen. And y'all ready for one last twist? After the show, Tayshia realized that she made a mistake. She flew to Maryland to get our problematic fave, John Paul Jones, back. Love is real, guys. Love is real. That's why almost every one of these couples are broken up today. Yeah, so this was in 2019. We're in 2024 now. Here are the updates. Hannah and Dylan actually got married, and their wedding was absolutely insane. I want to know, but I also absolutely do not want to know how much that wedding must have cost. And honestly, Hannah and Dylan are probably one of the most popular Bachelor Nation couples today, which is crazy given we barely saw them on the show after like episode 2. Dean and Kaylin also got married and they are also just living their best life. They're travel influencers, they've got a beautiful house in Colorado, and as messy as their time was on Paradise, it's nice to see them happy. Blake is now a father with his girlfriend Giannina Gibelli, who some of you might recognize from the first season of Love is Blind. I should also mention that Blake is a DJ now, and although Stagecoach 2020 was canceled due to the pandemic, at Stagecoach 2021, Blake was able to host his very own set. And if that doesn't show nature is healing, I don't know what does. I also want to be clear that Dean, Kaylin, Blake, Hannah, Dylan, they have all moved on and publicly said that they don't hold animosity towards one another for what happened on the show. Blake has publicly also said that Kaylin was isolated by producers the first 2 days of Paradise, which he absolutely believes contributed to her having such a heated reaction in their argument. They've all talked it out in private and are good. Again, do not be mean to these people on their social media. You leave them alone. John Paul Jones and Tayshia, yeah, they broke up pretty shortly after this was filmed, which eventually led to Tayshia being the Bachelorette in 2020. And oh my gosh, y'all, I loved Tayshia as the Bachelorette. She slayed it. Katie and Chris also broke up, which I suppose is not super surprising. And even though Chris has not gone back in the franchise, he is now dating Anna Redman from Matt James's season of The Bachelor. And finally, Demi and Christian also ended things. Since that time, Demi has been surprisingly open about her faults in her relationship with Christian, that she wasn't able to give Christian the commitment that Christian deserved. And Demi says that she was at times really selfish in that relationship. Demi, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, has been very open about her autism diagnosis, which was undiagnosed when she was in the Bachelor franchise, and how that impacted her behavior on the show, her relationship with alcohol, and how she's been able to work on these things. Christian has also moved on and is actually engaged to Taylor Blake. And you might actually recognize them as the owners of Knuckle Bump Farms. Christian is basically living her Stardew Valley life, and I love that for her. So that is how Bachelor in Paradise Season 6 ended. Easily one of the messiest seasons to date in all the good and the bad ways. I had a lot of fun looking back at this season, and I hope y'all did too. As usual, if you want to see more from me, I stream on Twitch Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and I upload the VODs of that to my second channel. I also upload monthly bonus videos on Patreon, and I talk about literally whatever we want to talk about over on there. And if you don't want to see any of that, that's fine. That's cool. If you liked this video, however, you could say, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.